Greetings, everyone. Happy Friday. We're just getting everything set up. This out here. Where is it? Invite people. Just grab that link. There we are. Okay. So welcome everybody to the pre-show. Today we have kind of a simplistic day, mainly because we have a special guest tonight, which you guys will be able to see on the pre-show very soon. And just to kind of give people a feel of what's going to be talked about tonight, we're going to be talking about Fortnite tutors. So you guys can look forward to that. We're also going to be talking about Capcom. Some of their numbers are in. We also have a big discussion, but I'm going to go ahead and let that hit when it hits. We also have episode 9 is, this is actually a couple of weeks old, but we're going to be talking about a lot of the returning cast for episode 9, including Carrie Fisher. The Digimon adventure film, we're going to be talking about that, and also the Power Rangers 25th anniversary, so you guys can check that out too. And like I said, we're going to be having a special guest to discuss all of this with, so bear with us and pardon our dust as we get this done. Let's see. So first of all, I hope everybody's had an awesome week. For me, it's just been busy because we got some news that kind of changed everything, as you guys can hear in my schedule update on the channel. We basically got told that we're kind of in the window for birth right now, whereas we thought the window was a little bit further out. So I'm having to wrap things up a little earlier than expected so that we can get ready to have baby. So that's going to be a thing. The Shadow Blazer has joined us.
Yeah, I'm here. Long last.
Indeed. At long last, yes. In fact, because you were that missed, what can we say? Let me tell you. I make it sound so bad, but no, it's not that case. I'm also just going to go ahead and be a little honest, because of the guest and all that. We don't really have a pre-show tonight. We're basically going to be kind of flying by the seat of our pants on some of these stories, but I did have a couple of listener suggestions that people wanted us to talk about. One in particular, because apparently you and I, Alex, were going to have the biggest reaction out of this, is the fact that Ryan Reynolds is going to be making a weed-based Home Alone parody called Stoned Alone.
God, so stupid. It's like the people who, like, I don't know.
Funniest thing is, we talked about this a couple of days ago.
We did. It reminds me back in when I was in college. I took a screenwriting class, and we all had to come up with like individual projects we were going to write. And yeah, I remember one guy in my class wanted to write like a kind of a deadly serious Home Alone, where like, oh, but all the slapstick is like real and has real consequences, so like they actually get hurt. And I'm like,
oh, God.
Why? That's the vibe I get from this whole Stoned Alone that Ryan Reynolds wants to do. It's just like, oh, it's like, what if Home Alone was like way more edgier? And I'm like,
at this point, like, the only thing that came to my mind was basically, is the kid going to be Deadpool? Is that what they're going to do? Because right now Ryan Reynolds is only interested in playing Deadpool. So what else can you do with it? And also the movie's called Stoned Alone. Come on, there's tons of Deadpool jokes to be made in there. So there you go. We also have our special guest joining us for the pre-show.
Hi.
Welcome, Shay Tari.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're doing all right. We're just getting the pre-show going while everybody gathers, and then we will get the actual podcast going. Now, unfortunately, I actually forgot to send you the agenda tonight, Shay, but we'll just go ahead and in the chat, we'll put in the stories so you can take a look at them as we talk about them. And we actually have a discussion topic that, even though it's kind of last minute prepared, I think is going to be right up your alley. So
Oh, perfect.
I think this is going to be awesome. But yeah, anyway, back onto the pre-show. So we're talking about Stoned Alone. The next brainchild of Ryan Reynolds. I guess my only question is this going to be another movie where he makes fun of the fact that he was in Green Lantern?
I'm sure he's going to continue making fun of that fact.
Come on. It's like been one of his things where he just wants to bring that up. Like, yes, I was in Green Lantern. Yes, it was stupid. I'm sorry. Even though I'm one of the few people that'll be like, well, but Ryan, you were okay in the movie. It was just the villain that was stupid. Why do you have to kill yourself off in the Easter eggs for Deadpool 2 because you took the script? You weren't the problem. I mean, like, granted, there's not a whole lot of people I can think of that can play, or I could actually list out a few people who could play Hal Jordan, but at the same time, it's like Ryan Reynolds was one of them, and he actually did pull it off. It's just the villain you picked was stupid. For lack of a better term, stupid. So you guys' thoughts on this? That I can't add anything more aside from the joke that's been done all over the internet, and that is that Macaulay Culkin immediately sues Ryan Reynolds for copyright infringement because he's the Home Alone kid, for crying out loud.
Yeah, but I don't think this is going to actually have a kid. It's supposed to be like about a stoner who gets high and then burglars break into his house. So
basically you should have the older Macaulay Culkin.
He did get busted for pot like way back in 2003.
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely out of the question to just bring him in there. But Shay, what's your take on this? This is kind of a stupid premise, but Ryan Reynolds, I mean, that's kind of what he does now.
I actually had not heard of this at all, so this is news for me. Completely.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You've seen the Deadpool movies, right?
Yes, I've seen 1 and 2.
Have you seen any of the other Ryan Reynolds things that he's done? Like, have you seen X-Men Origins or?
Yeah, I did not see Green Lantern because I heard that was terrible, so I did not see that. And yes, I had seen like X-Men Origins. Okay.
So you were kind of used to Ryan Reynolds at this point, and this is the kind of humor that he goes towards. I mean, I don't know, Alex, like what would be a weirder idea? Stoned Alone or Action Point?
Stoned Alone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because Action Point was a real theme park.
Well, the other thing that just blows my mind on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, it's he's put it out as a Home Alone parody. Okay? Let me just point things out. Home Alone was a comedy already. And it was about a kid who was basically was stuck home alone because his parents and his family went off on vacation. And when thieves try to rob the house, he defends the house. So how do you retool this with Ryan Reynolds in it? Because let's just be honest, if he's directing or whatever, he's going to be in this movie.
If he's in the movie, I hope he plays one of the villains trying to break into the house.
I was actually going to say, like, should he play the Joe Pesci villain?
Because that's the only role I could see him playing. I can't see him playing the dad. I can't see him being like super serious. No. I could see him totally playing one of the villains, and probably the taller of the two, the one that was the dumbest of them. Like, I could see him playing that character.
Actually, completely. You know what? You're right. And you know what he should do? And I can't even believe I'm recommending this because this guy should probably go to jail. But TJ Miller will be brought in, and he will be the Joe Pesci villain. And that way they're kind of like a duo getting smacked around.
Yeah. Well, if they did Home Alone and had just one person getting smacked around, like if they redid it, like that wouldn't be as great as if there were two. Because that's what made Home Alone so great, is that there were two villains.
Exactly. You had a dumber villain who could fall for the really obvious ploys, but then you also had a kind of smarter villain who could then like think things through and still get tricked. So, yeah. I mean, at that point, you could easily have that. But I think we've pretty much hit this nail on the head. It's like, Ryan, we love you. We don't know what you're thinking here. And please have Macaulay Culkin involved. I'm pretty sure he has no problem being stoned alone. Snap. Moving on. So the next story that we actually have is, let's see. I'm actually digging this out right here now. Aside from this story that I already let Alex know about, by the way, guys, because a couple of listeners recommended, oh my gosh, do you know that the Transformers movie, the 80s movie, is coming to theaters for one night? I'm like, yes, I already let Alex know. And by the way, Alex, I will pay to take you. We still haven't done it yet. I will pay to take you.
Well, it's going to depend on when it comes. I mean, I do have a lot of... It's hard to justify a night screening when I have to be up for work so early in the morning.
We have a date. It's September 7th.
Oh, good, because I'll be taking my little own staycation, big air quotes there, because I'm just going to take just a few days off from work as kind of a birthday treat to myself. So that would work.
Now we just have to figure out the whole babysitting thing because baby is coming. Yeah. So we'll figure that out. But actually, while we have Shay here, Shay, have you ever seen the 80s Transformers movie?
No, I didn't know there was an 80s Transformers movie.
Oh my gosh. You think like the first ever Transformers movie was Bay?
Yes. Well, I had said no. Well, I knew that there was like a Transformers cartoon that had came out.
Yeah.
Also, of course. But as far as like is the one in the 80s, was that live action or was it just like animated?
The 80s movie was animated because it was built more towards kids and it actually had a purpose. It was actually getting rid of
I have heard of it.
Yeah, its purpose was to get rid of the first line of toys in the story to incorporate a second line so that they could bring them all out. Mm-hmm. So at that point, yeah, it's animated. It's considered to be the best Transformers movie. Like, you know,
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it.
Oh, if only I could pay for a plane ticket, Shay, I would bring you out and I would have you see it too. It is amazing. You will literally walk out going, why on earth did I think the Michael Bay movies were even remotely good?
Fun fact, animated by Toei.
By Toei, yeah. So there you go. Anime justification. So yes. Yeah, we already got this one covered. That way you guys have the notification for that. The other thing that we should probably get into is the Resistance series that got announced. So that we've already kind of known that they were going to do something like this a couple of months ago when they unveiled Star Wars Resistance. Basically, to bring people up to speed, Shay, I'm pretty much assuming like you know the Clone Wars, right? The Clone Wars series that came out.
Yes.
Okay, so you have Clone Wars, then they also had Rebels, and now we're going to do a whole new series based on roughly the events leading up into Force Awakens. So the main characters for this are going to be Poe Dameron, and also another confirmed one is, oh crap, what's her name? Captain Phasma are going to be main characters in this, and it's going to be animated in the, I'm guessing it's the CG animated anime style is what it's called, Alex?
Yeah, because it's by Polygon Pictures, and they're a Japanese animation studio.
Yeah, so at this point, if people don't know who Polygon Pictures are, they are the same company that made the two Asian, is that how you say it? Asian anime series and the film trilogy that came out with it. And also the most recent Netflix Godzilla animated movies have been made by them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at that point, it's these guys who are going to be making the Resistance series leading up into the events of Force Awakens. So what is you guys' take on, what are you guys' thoughts on them doing a whole new series? Along with, by the way, you know, we did also get the Clone Wars announcement that Clone Wars is going to have one more season to finish up loose ends and everything like that. Is this a good idea considering all the controversy surrounding Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and even Episode 9 up until this point? Is this a good idea to do this series?
Possibly. I mean, people were pretty lukewarm on Clone Wars, but they really enjoyed like the cartoons that came out with it. So this might be something to at least win over some fans or people who maybe were lukewarm about Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
See, you say lukewarm, and then I see like the reactions of so many people when season 7 of the Clone Wars got announced, and they're like,
well, I said they were
like,
lukewarm. I said I said lukewarm about Attack of the Clones. Maybe I mixed up my words there, but you know, people who weren't big on Attack on the Clones or any of the prequel movies really did like a lot of the cartoon spinoffs that came out of it.
Yeah, they really did. In fact, I was actually surprised that the Dave Filoni Clone Wars. I mean, the Genndy Tartakovsky one did well too. We have to acknowledge that. But the Dave Filoni Clone Wars and Rebels have probably had more solid audiences than all the prequel movies combined at this point. Like Phantom Menace had it, but then Attack of the Clones is where you started to lose people because people were just not attached to it. Shay, what's your take on the Resistance series? Is this something that you're excited about?
My take on it is I don't think it's a bad thing that they're coming out with a whole new series. I know I heard when they did announce another season of Clone Wars, like my Twitter like exploded, and so many people also like talked about it, and they were actually really excited about that it was getting another season. And the only thing I can think of is like anytime a new series is like announced, and even though people are maybe lukewarm about the series in general, like I don't feel it's anything bad. For me, it always takes me back to like when they announced a whole new series for Full Metal Alchemist. And even though Full Metal Alchemist already had a huge following, when they did Brotherhood, some people were very lukewarm about coming out with another series because they felt that the first one was done so well. So to me, if they do this one and they do it really, really well, they'll probably win back an audience too, because they'll be like, they're actually doing good.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys would probably know better than me. When Sailor Moon Crystal got announced, that had a pretty lukewarm reception to it, right? Because a lot of people weren't necessarily on board.
I think, well, at least for me, I feel like a lot of people were excited about it because it was like they were coming out with the series again, and it was kind of like getting the old people who knew the original watching it again, and also introducing a lot of new fans who had never seen Sailor Moon watching it. I think what got more of the lukewarm response was like once they released like how the animation looked like, and then hearing who the voices were being played by, and then watching the storyline, and then that's when it started to, at least to me, start to lose people, was because it was so vastly different from the original. And not just because of the source material, which granted, I was glad they followed the manga, but mostly because they took out so many elements that made the original so well done. They took those out. And that's what made a lot of people lukewarm about it.
Especially considering that, like, you know, you brought up Brotherhood. I brought up Crystal because they kind of have the same deal. Is where the 2003 FMA was following its own timeline. It was because the manga wasn't complete. Brotherhood followed the manga. To the letter, from what I understand. And so at that point, like, people had that lukewarm response because they already had seen the 03 FMA and weren't sure if they wanted to come back for it. Crystal kind of had the same thing where it was like, well, this is following the manga, and the reception being, you know, kind of what you said, but also just like the whole, I don't know, like, is this going to be better or worse? Like, this series came from way back in the 80s, early 90s. Is it going to get better? And that animation style, I know a lot of people were kind of thrown off by it. Just seeing whether or not that was actually going to work. Because here's the thing, like, when they were trying to do the manga kind of thing, I remember a lot of people complaining about glamming up the main characters, like making them look way too girly. So at that point, they're not relatable to really anybody aside from like girly girls, which, I mean, I've seen a few episodes. I don't know if I agree with that, but okay.
Right. Yeah, I don't agree with the whole girl aspect, but I do feel like they played on a lot of the romance aspect of it, which was what the manga wasn't really about. Like, everyone agreed, especially with the original series and of course the manga, everyone was like, it was mostly about friendship and having a group of female characters that worked together and, you know, defeated. And then they also had such vastly different personalities that every girl could find themselves in one of the characters. So when Crystal came out, and then all of a sudden the characters had vastly different, not only personalities, but they weren't really shown how different their personalities were. No one could really choose who their like favorite was or who they related to the most. And they really played on the romance between Usagi and Mamoru so much. Everyone was like, it basically became a regular shoujo anime with some aspects of like friendship and action thrown in there. And that's what made a lot of people, especially for the first season at least, not enjoy it as much as they did like with the original.
See, and at that point, like, I don't know, like, I'm I have kind of a 50-50 deal with it. I think that they did actually do some things right with Crystal. But then there are just things that I'm used to with the 80s series that weren't necessarily followed here. And granted, a lot of that is just because they had to, like with most shonen series, they had to kind of ad-lib it while the manga was being written. So
right.
At that point, you just kind of had to adapt to it overall. But first of all, welcoming Stephen Romney to the show. So let's actually go ahead and get your thoughts on this. We're talking about the Resistance series that we already know had been announced from earlier this year, but now we kind of have a few more details to it. So let me catch you up really quick, Romney. We know that Dave Filoni is he created the series with Athena Portillo, Justin Ridge, Brandon Auman as executive producers, and also Amy Breth Christensen as the art director. And it's being done by Polygon Pictures, aka the people who did the Netflix Godzilla movies most recently. Is this a good idea or a bad idea to you?
Honestly, it's hard to say either way, since I've never really been that invested in pretty much the Star Wars universe beyond just the movies. So I honestly have no real opinion, since I haven't really watched Clone Wars. I haven't even seen the Netflix Godzilla film, so I can't really voice too much of an opinion on that. Yeah. I mean, if people are excited, that's fine. It's just, well, just not for me.
Okay. So at that point, do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea for them to do this? I mean, they're already doing season 7 of Clone Wars. That's going to be happening. We know that. So like on top of that, with this Resistance series, that's basically in the kind of controversial trilogy right now, as it were, is this a good idea to do it?
From a business standpoint, yes. Rather than trying to reconcile the continuity snarls that would emerge from trying to either go back into the time of the prequel trilogy or trying to bridge that gap between the two previous trilogies, it would probably be in Disney's best interest to try to create a series that's set in the new timeline where things haven't been set in stone yet, whereas trying to go back in the past, you basically are trying to manage the continuity, whereas if you kind of set it in the timeline of the new films where things are being set as we go along, it'll be a lot easier to keep track of any potential continuity hiccups along the way.
Agreed.
So yeah, from a business sense, it makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, we already know the events are going to lead up to episode 7, so that way they don't have to interfere with the movies. The movies can stay their proper canon. And we do know that, like, a couple of main characters like Poe Dameron are going to get featured, as well as Captain Phasma. That makes sense, because these characters need to be featured, because in a lot of cases, I have seen arguments where it's hard to get behind Poe, because you don't really know a whole lot about him. And also Phasma has her issues.
Yeah, I mean, in defense of Poe, they've done a little bit better of establishing him in the extended universe than Phasma. I mean, I would definitely recommend the Greg Rucka novel, Before the Awakening, since that does what an extended universe novel is supposed to do, where it gets you kind of excited about the film and about the new universe, since the short story in Before the Awakening gives you a little bit more insight into why Poe both became a pilot, an X-Wing pilot, and why he eventually joined the Resistance. And honestly, and probably it was a nice, clear, concise way, rather than some of the more roundabout ways they've tried to go about it in the other parts of the extended universe. It basically does what it should do, where it's a case of, hey, here's a little bit of information that feeds into the insight of what we see in episode 7. Yeah, and if they were to adapt that short story, I'd be fine. But I worry that they could be trying to add too much to the character that ultimately isn't actually all that necessary, which is something even before the Disney buyout, the extended universe has done, often to the detriment of the lore as a whole, raising more questions than giving any answers.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and get things ready. That's pretty much it for the pre-show. So let's go ahead and get ready for the podcast. So if you guys want to go ahead and start recording really quick, Shay, did you actually take the Discord link that I put in the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, crap. I actually gave the wrong one then. Oops. Okay. Let's just go ahead and fix that now, shall we? My bad. Let's go ahead and see if we can get rid of that. There we go. Because I gave the wrong one. And I don't want to get the Art of Anime mad at me. There we go. So there you go. So let's just put in new Discord link. All right, so let me know when you guys are ready to record, and we
Sounds
can get
speed.
going.
Ready.
Okay,
1 second.
all good. Okay. There we go. Just setting everything back up again. I mean, I don't think Art of Anime is going to kill us for inviting Shay, so that'll work. I just probably better fix that link. I mean, that's proper. Okay. So you're ready to go, Shay?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. So this is just a little tradition. Don't worry too much about it, Shay, but this is just what we do to sync things up. 3, 2, 1. So I have something to sync the audio all together. And then let me get my radio voice on, because that's what I do. As I prep everything. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, August 3rd, 2018. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome week so far. For me, it's been kind of busy because baby, and that's really literally what our entire house has been talking about this entire time. So obviously, I'm interested and, in fact, ready to go on talking about some geek news, reviews, and opinions. So let's go ahead and introduce the panel. And I'm actually going to go ahead and start up. So this is our usual panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTube content creators, fellow awesome guys, and in this case, gals in general. And if you guys aren't following them on their respective channels, you should be, damn it. And we're actually going to start off with our special guest this evening. Guys, I don't know if you realize this at all. I don't know if you realize this, but we're doing a podcast with a girl. Future Drac, make sure to add in like dramatic music here, and I'll just go ahead and cut it all out. But yes, we have a special guest by the name of Shay Tari, who is joining us this evening. First of all, Shay, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Aside from the baby thing, I think we're going to be fine. Now, before I introduce the other panelists, really quick, since you're brand spanking new to the podcast, Shay, let's just go ahead and go over like what content that you provide and where you specifically kind of give your content. So, like, obviously you have your own YouTube channel, and what content or subjects that you like to stick to. What makes you geeky is basically what we're asking here. What makes you geeky, Shay?
What makes me geeky is that I mostly do anime reviews and anime discussions, manga reviews, manga discussions, and also movie reviews, since I tend to go to the movies a lot and watch a lot of the new geeky movies that come out. It's like the Marvel ones and things of that matter.
All right. And then also we are being joined by our other panels of awesome geeks and awesome YouTube content creators as well. Starting, of course, with the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Short, who has decided to join us graciously out of the loving, warm embrace of all the, well, I was going to make a K-On joke, but I actually can't make that work. Alex, how are you doing?
I don't know why are you always trying to make that joke, because it never works, but...
See, it always worked when you had the Black Rose poster, and I'm like, oh, out of the loving embrace of his Black Rose poster, and now it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because I changed the posters because you kept bugging me too.
Technically, I didn't. The listeners did, but anyway. All right, so good to know. And then we also have Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Monster Clash, the upcoming Monster Clash, mind you, Martial March, and all that other fun stuff. Stephen Romney, how you doing tonight?
Oh, doing pretty good. This week has had its ups and downs, but on the plus side, I've been getting into the habit of, getting used to using the Wii balance board almost every single day. I mean, on the upside, I'm getting my exercise. On the downside, my calves hurt like hell.
Well, I guess another upside is you haven't been final smashed yet by the Wii Fit trainer.
No, so long as you do what she tells you to, you're fine.
All right. Because that was kind of the problem, is like when you play the Wii Fit trainer, everybody dies around us when we play Smash. But then all of a sudden, when you have to deal with the Wii Fit trainer on your own, it makes me wonder, do you get smashed?
No. Again, just follow the prompts, do the exercises she says, and everything is fine.
All right, and let's go ahead and get things started with the news of the evening. We actually have quite a few stories as well as an interesting discussion that we actually need to get into. So let's go ahead and start things off with a little bit of the silly. As we actually confirmed, I think the story broke like earlier this week, and it's silly beyond all measure. And in fact, we actually, really quick, let me send you the link, Shay, so you can get in there. We found out that apparently parents are paying tutors to stop their kids from getting owned in Fortnite. Yes, you heard me right. Parents are paying tutors to help their kids get good at Fortnite.
You know, I mean, it's easy to make a joke here, but given the kind of climate we're in and given that esports are becoming a thing, it doesn't sound that strange.
It really doesn't. I have to agree here.
Okay, so obviously I'm the old fuddy-duddy here, but
I agree with
but literally,
like, this is ridiculous.
When this story broke, so to bring Shay up to speed, like we actually do have a little bit of a Facebook chat where we discuss these stories in advance just to see what can work, what can't. And I literally put it as my reaction to this story when, it was Alex that found it, is I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but back in my day, you had to teach yourself to get good at them video games. And now I feel old. So, I mean, at that point, let's actually get into this a little bit. Yes, this is basically a private tutoring service, and it has grown into I can't even believe I'm saying this, a $7 billion industry, and it's continuing to grow with a slew of educational startups like Varsity Tutors, where students can pay for extra help online. So, along with like being able to do better in your math class, along with doing better in your English class, you can pay to get good at Fortnite.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, I'm probably coming at this from a very like analytical perspective, probably more than the story warrants. But when you really think about it, I don't see this as any different from parents paying for kids to have like private coaches that help them with football practice or soccer practice or helping them with gymnastics. It's very much a case of, well, esports is becoming a viable career choice. And it's also a case that there are certain skills because, yes, ideally you would teach yourself to be good at a game by playing it over and over and over again. But if in terms
that's what would be doing here.
Yeah. And it's also a case of there are some things that you don't really learn on your own that sometimes having a coach, for lack of a better term, can teach you. I mean, especially when it comes to terms of thinking out strategies. I mean, for example, say instead of Fortnite, you had an Overwatch team. Like say that in some weird alternate universe, there was a high school Overwatch team. You would naturally have someone who would kind of teach them different strategies. Like, okay, here's how to play these different roles properly. Here's how to work together. Stuff like that. Although you can learn it under a kind of baptism by fire, I can see this actually working. Plus, honestly, it's a case of, hey, there's a new need being created. Naturally, people are thinking, hey, I'm really good at this game. Let's use what I know about this game to make some money.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the Overwatch example because, so the website Gamer Sensei, they actually have hundreds of coaches, many of which specialize in Fortnite. When I did additional homework here, I mean, most of them are just for the shooters. Okay. So like there are coaches that specialize in Call of Duty, that specialize in Destiny, that specialize in Overwatch, that specialize in a lot of these shooters. But then occasionally you do have like coaches that can do League of Legends and and a bunch of other games on top of that. And what's surprising about this is that these coaches right now, depending on their skill, can charge between $10 to $25 an hour to teach your kids to get good at games. Man, I am in the wrong line of work, guys. You know what? That's the end of the podcast. I'm just going to need to go and rethink my life. Now I'm going to be a World of Warcraft coach so that I can teach people to get all those elite deeps in the raids. Cause that's great as far as I'm concerned.
I think you could be very lucrative at that.
I actually probably could. I remember a couple of years ago, since I've had this discussion with a few people, but I get pretty zen-like when I'm leveling in any RPG, specifically like WoW. It's actually like how I go to bed at night, is like I go level in something because it's so zen-like, it kind of turns off higher brain function. So at that point, a lot of people were telling me like that should be your career. You should just level for a living. Like you should be like the first ever US leveling service in World of Warcraft. And I'm not going to lie, guys, I actually considered it at one point because I had student debt to pay.
I mean, I find this kind of ridiculous personally. Like, I'm sorry, because I'm kind of like you. I was like, for me, it was like you played a game, you learned how to get good at it. Losing was just a part of the process. Getting owned was a part of the process. And sometimes it just came to the point that there just are some games you're just not good at. But I think the fact that there's parents that are now like, I want my child to do this, it's kind of, in a way, taking the fun out of it. I mean, the main reason a lot of people started playing video games was because it was fun. It was fun to play with your friends, just fun to play all around. But I feel like now that you're making, it seems like they're going to make their child be good at it because of the fact that now you can make a career out of it. Yeah. And it's going to make it where it's no longer fun. It's like kids are going to hate playing video games. I mean, my own parents are kind of like, you're playing those games again, like learn, like pick up a book, you know, do something like that. And I'm not saying that parents shouldn't encourage their kids, like if their child's good at playing video game, encourage it, especially if they know that this can become a business or can become a career. But now that you're hiring a tutor because your child is getting owned, but it sounds like it's the fact that their kids are crying about it and they're upset about hearing their kids cry about the fact that they can't win, rather than the fact that they're doing it because they want their child to have a career. I think that's ridiculous. But I mean, it sounds like these are millennial parents, and I'm a millennial. So, but I feel like these are parents who are like a part of the whole new age swing of things.
Yeah,
not kids, not parents like an older generation.
Yeah, because the oldest millennial, if you really want to get the definition, the oldest in the range would be 38 now. So there probably are a number of them that are becoming parents at this point.
But here's the thing: is Shay actually makes a lot of really good points. Is like, you know, a lot of parents, you know, you see this typically in TV where parents will force kids to get piano lessons, or they'll get violin lessons, or stuff like that, stuff that they know will pay really, really good. And so at that point, you do actually create this kind of demographic where like gaming becomes a chore. Gaming becomes part of your regular everyday routine. So there are kids who would just like, they'll never look at gaming as fun. At least in that context. Like if they're specifically trained in Fortnite, they might look at, I don't know, Mario and still see fun there. But if they're like being trained in Fortnite or Smash Brothers or something like that, they might just look at that and go, ugh, because that's what they do for a living. I mean, that's kind of the problem that everybody runs into. But I mean, at the same time, this is just, it's cool. I get you guys' argument, but it's also just kind of silly. I never thought, like, I'm the old fart here. I never thought I'd see the day that
never thought so either.
Yes, this is so weird.
I grew up with parents who were kind of like, you can play video games when you're done with your homework, on the weekends. That's how I like grew up with like video games. And I played video games a lot as a kid. My brother played video games a lot also. So it's crazy for me to think that parents are now like treating video gaming as similar to like taking karate classes or ballet or you know, chess lessons or anything else like that. It's just so weird and so crazy to think about. And for me, the best part about playing a game, especially if it was new to it and you never played it before, was playing with your friends and having your friends teach you how to play it and teach you with strategies in a way where it wasn't like, this is how you're supposed to do it. It was kind of like, hey, watch me, see how I play. You'll get your own way of playing it and playing it on your own and seeing what works for you, what doesn't work, and just having a lot of fun. And if you lose, you lose. That's the best part. And I think with the whole thing of like strategies and how a tutor can teach you how to strategize, you learn that on your own just playing video games by yourself. Because that's why even now a lot of people who have businesses have said they like to hire people who play video games because they can think on their feet a lot quicker because they're forced to, in those situations, to make real quick decisions. And it's kind of like you either win or you lose. So a lot of them like to hire people, but if you're growing up in that mentality because someone's forcing you to think that way, it's kind of strange. Like, I just think it's so weird.
Yeah. But the other thing we also have to consider here is like we look at things like the Overwatch League and how much the sponsors the sponsors are paying for those teams, and they just barely added 2 whole new franchises, 2 whole new teams to the Overwatch League. Like the parents of this day and age, like millennial parents, are probably looking at this and going, "Wow, these are actually viable career options." I mean, for crying, like I was one of those kids that actually grew up on the whole concept of. I don't know how much of a Blizzard fan you actually are, Shay, but in North Korea, you can, or not North Korea, South Korea. In South Korea, if you're a really, really good StarCraft player there, because StarCraft is a thing there, even StarCraft 2 kind of is, you can earn roughly in their currency what NFL players earn here in South Korea. If you're a seasoned StarCraft player.
Yeah, there's another factor to consider that the article also brings up. Specifically, we're going off of an article published by The Guardian, and it also points out that there's almost this societal pressure as well, where parents are not just paying just because it's a viable career option, just because you can get scholarships at certain colleges for it, but there's also that societal pressure of, oh, well, we don't want our kids getting bullied because they suck at a game, which... Well, I'm of 2 minds of this, because on the one hand, yes, I was bullied because I wasn't into sports. I wasn't into a lot of that stuff. And so
I think all of us could say like we were bullied at one point, right?
Yeah. And so on the one hand, I can get where that concern is coming from, but at the same time, it's also a case of, is this really the best way to go about it? Because I mean, it's like Shay mentioned, like if you make something that's supposed to be fun into a chore, it stops being fun. And so would that also take something that a kid likes to do and turn it into something that's no longer as enjoyable, especially given how younger kids tend to drop interests at the drop of a hat? I mean, I know I'm guilty of that. And so that also is the other concern of, is this also not only parents trying to cultivate children who are going to make money off of this, but are they also trying to insulate them from the hardships of social interactions and thereby setting themselves up for failure down the line? Because what if they get used to the idea of, oh, my parents will pay for these sessions for me to get better at something, and then they're trying to fend for themselves? That, I mean, again, it's a sticky issue, but I think that's another factor to consider, is that these same millennial parents are bringing in a lot of those insecurities based on the experiences they grew up with. And, well, now that nerds have kind of conquered the world, it's basically we've got a whole bunch of different reasons to try to one-up each other in our social circles.
Well, and here's the thing, too, that a lot of people aren't necessarily considering is that, yeah, sure, you paid to be able to be an expert at Fortnite, but look, Fortnite, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Overwatch, those are all going to be kind of situated and last for a while. But what if you say paid for a service to learn Call of Duty, a series that changes every year, every other year, and in some cases, big balance changes to the point where like your kid may have been taught like, oh, sniper's the way to go, and then all of a sudden, no, soldier's the way to go. Now they're kind of up a creek. They've spent all this money getting coached, and you hope that they can learn that whole new routine, but they might not be able to. That's another thing that people have to consider.
You know, given esports are becoming such big business now, I do sense that game makers who develop these kinds of big multiplayer, especially like multiplayer battle arena kind of games, they're really going to like make essentially one consistent version with little updates here and there.
We already have that. Like we have Fortnite, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Overwatch, Quake Champions. All of them are doing it.
Yeah, just because it's the same reason. Football games like football, baseball, soccer, all these sports have changed very little over the several centuries or just few decades that they've been played, and that's just how it's probably going to be in the new esports world that we live in.
It's the same reason why people play Street Fighter 2 Turbo even in modern day tournaments, because that's an established game. You don't have to explain to a bunch of people how it's played. The system is already there.
Yeah.
Shay, you've had a thought here, and we kind of talked over you a couple times.
It's kind of like forcing your kid to make YouTube videos because you know that they can essentially make a career off of YouTube, and then it doesn't make it fun anymore. because now you're just forcing your kid to do something. And I also feel like, as far as the whole like bullying thing is concerned, of them feeling like their child being bullied because they're not good at the game, I think that's when you maybe as a parent can kind of be like, well, that's when you just keep trying with just, get better at the game. And plus it's like, in some ways, it's like, to me, there's other things that a child can pick on you about besides how bad you are at a game. You can get better at a game, but if they're like picking on like your looks or something like that, that's really like really messing with you, then yeah, like definitely as a parent, step in regardless for any bullying. But I feel like taking it to an extreme of like, I'm going to pay someone $25 an hour to sit with you and teach you how to play Fortnite because someone's picking on you for it. It just reminds me of the whole mentality of like, when you go to like a softball tournament for kids, everyone gets an award. Like no one has that mentality of how it feels to lose. And it's like, hey, that's when you're like, hey, some people are good at certain games, some people are not. Like I can gladly say, hey, I'm very bad at RPGs, so I don't play them that often because I'm so bad at them and I don't have the patience sometimes to maneuver and think in those strategic ways sometimes. And I like those games that are quick and action paced, and sometimes I'm very good at those games. Like racing games I can be very good at, the same way how I can be good at like the Dragon Ball Z fighting games. You win some, you lose some, you learn which ones you're good at, which ones you're bad at. And if you're bad at a game, you just keep playing it to get better at it. But there's no way that I, as a parent, would pay someone $25 an hour to teach my kid to play. I would tell them, do you have a friend that plays? Yes. Are they good at it?
Exactly.
Yes. Have them teach. And if they say, no, my friends are also bad at it, then I'll say, well, then you guys can all be bad together and learn from each other. That's
and I don't even I don't even need to worry about this stuff because, nor like looking at from my kids' perspective, my kids are probably going to be, hopefully, I could totally see the opposite happening where they become COD junkies, and I'm not. But like a lot of the games that I'm going to be interested in, I can help them anyway. So at that point, I don't necessarily need to pay for the coaching service. I can just play with them. But I do find it a little interesting, Shay, that you say you're not very good at RPGs, and yet you made a claim around June about a certain action RPG coming out in January.
Oh, yes. Kingdom Hearts.
I'm gonna hold you to that one.
Okay.
Well,
so when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, my boyfriend plays them or has played them. I played the first one, but never made it off the island because I couldn't figure out how to get off of the island in the first one, so I gave up. But I do find the games very interesting. So I told my boyfriend that when the third one comes out, I will play it with him. So we've been trying to play our way through the games, but I have played some RPGs. Like I played Final Fantasy, the one that came out for Xbox that had snow and lightning and everybody. I forgot the name
13.
of it. 13. I played Final Fantasy 13 and I got to one particular part where I had to play with one character and I could not beat it. And I then gave up because I was done with it. So
gotcha.
I'll play them, but I noticed that my attention span is not that great on RPGs compared to like playing like Mario Kart or even with Pokemon. I'm better with Pokemon since
Pokemon is a whole other animal of RPG just because it is kind of built towards the kid audience that's there.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's always been kind of an entry level RPG. But it sounds to me like you'd be more in your element in say like an action brawler kind of thing,
right?
As opposed to so like Zelda would be your thing. Kind of thing. Romney, so you had other thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, like one other thing to consider is also just the trend, because one thing that people have also noticed is that the types of games that the younger generation growing up now are interested in is vastly different from what we were interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the more popular ones is Minecraft, for example, so that could also color the landscape where kids aren't gravitating towards the super intense reflex-based action games, but maybe kind of flocking towards a lot of these more simulation-based games like Minecraft, where you have to build something or engineer something. I mean, that's why Mojang even developed kind of an educational version of it that schools can use to teach specific concepts. And that's another factor we may see in the future where it may kind of go the same way that certain sports have gone, where you've got the games that people play because, oh, this will get you the scholarships. Oh, this will get you into these colleges, and then you've got the niche sports that are just like, oh, well, these are the ones that the hobbyists take part in unless you want to get really, really good at it and somehow get into the Olympics for it. I mean, I guess the best comparison, Call of Duty would be kind of like the football, baseball sort of sports, And then something like Minecraft would be kind of like fencing, where it's a case of if you're really into it, you can probably make a career off of it, but it's not as mainstream.
Well, and if you consider, like, there's been a YouTube stereotype for years of, like, what are the kids usually making as far as YouTube content? Minecraft. They're usually doing, like, Minecraft playthroughs, creating their own servers, things like that. There are adults that do it, but most of the time it is kids. And in fact, I have horror, I know of horror stories where parents tried to force their kids to play Minecraft just because they felt it would make their kids smarter, and it didn't work out. Like, it just got them pissed at the game, roughly. But I do know that my brother actually used it as kind of an interesting litmus. Since he's a programmer, he wanted to see, like, if any of his kids had any kind of programming potential. And so he basically would have his, like, we're not saying he forced them or anything like that, but he did give them Minecraft and just kind of saw what they did with it. Like, if they played on other people's servers, if they played with other people, or if they tried to go off and create things themselves. And he actually did find one of his daughters did have kind of an aptitude, and therefore use that as a springboard to kind of nurture her into other ways that she could maybe program if that's where she wanted to go. And that's one of the things I've always found really cool is a while back, we actually got RPG Maker for her so that she could be able to try that stuff out. And so Minecraft is like an interesting little litmus for a lot of people to try this out. But unfortunately, we're running out of time here. So final thoughts on this particular story before we move on into the next one.
It's kind of sucky that will, unfortunately, like real sports and like real other like acting, and that you're going to have those parents who do want to live a little vicariously through their kids. You know, it's the unfortunate side effect I think is going to inevitably happen. You know, we have it in stage parents and parents that get into brawls in sports fields, even for little leagues. It's sad.
Yes.
Look, the soccer mom ain't going anywhere. All right. The soccer mom will exist. I mean, I've already committed to the fact that if my kids actually do become sports nuts, it's not likely, but they could, I'd probably be the soccer dad. All right. I'd probably be that guy. I'd also be the guy that brings the 3DS to the soccer game because, well, I don't find soccer all that entertaining. I love my daughters, but I would probably dig out the 3DS every now and then to keep my focus.
See, that's when you have a compromise. You pull out the 3DS and then you're playing Inazuma 11 during the soccer game.
I was actually going to say, like, some kind of RPG where not like Bravely Default, like, go play that again and just like play it.
It's because the joke is that Inazuma 11 is a soccer RPG.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I'll give you that. Maybe I'll also play Attack of the Saiyans while I'm watching them fence. So at that point, let's go ahead and move into the next story, which is actually good news for one of our favorite video game companies, Capcom. So a lot of people might have noticed that there was probably the biggest hyped game that walked out of E3 2018 this year was the Resident Evil 2 remake. What a lot of people didn't notice is that they actually have been having success up until June with Monster Hunter World. So much so that we are literally, I think, at least a week or two or maybe it's already released by now, the PC's release of Monster Hunter World. And up until that point, they had already sold 8.3 million units their last fiscal quarter just from Monster Hunter World's physical PS4 release. So here's the story for you, Shay, also. So we're already looking at, compared to their previous year and their previous quarter, there's a net sales increase because of Monster Hunter World of 46.5% in their profits this year. That's insane considering where Capcom was, say, last year or maybe even the year before that. Resident Evil 7 did well in 2017, mind you. Like, we're not denying that, but the numbers that Monster Hunter World actually pulled off were a lot better, and this game hasn't even come out on PC yet. It's just PS4, and this isn't even accounting for, or actually, no, it is accounting for physical shipments as well as digital sales. So at that point, this is the PS4 version and how well it did. And this is kind of, now a lot of people are already asking, does this mean that Capcom has a lot more money to do things like, say, remakes, new franchises, things like that? One thing I think is easy enough to state is that a lot of this money is probably going to Monster Hunter World, okay? Because they want to be able to fuel that content and keep people there, especially considering that, unlike other MMOs, there isn't a payment model for Monster Hunter World. It's you buy the game, that's it. You pay for the DLC, that's it. So they'll probably put a lot of that money towards World, but I have a feeling that yes, because they're already hinting at, since the Resident Evil 2 remake got such hype, out of E3 that they're already talking about maybe doing a remake for Resident Evil 3. I've also heard tell that they want to take some of their older franchises with that extra money and start bringing them back. So this is already a good thing for Capcom as a whole. But what do you guys think about it? Monster Hunter World is obviously their biggest seller right now, but is this a good thing for Capcom? Will they devote more or devote solely to Monster Hunter World, do you think? Or could we actually see some of these other promises happening? A remake of 2 is happening, but a remake of 3. A remake of, I don't know, Breath of Fire, for crying out loud.
Well, I'd say we should probably slow our roll in terms of, remake of 3, remake of all these other franchises, because Capcom kind of learned their lesson when they tried putting too many eggs in too many different baskets. Yes. Case in point, DMC Devil May Cry and Resident Evil 6 and how much money they lost on that. So, yes, it's good they're making a whole bunch of money, but even looking in the comments of the IGN article, people saying, another Dragon's Dogma. It's a case of, no, Capcom's probably going to play it a bit more safe. Because although, yes, the Resident Evil 2 remake was hyped, it's not out yet. They want to see, okay, will this actually generate enough revenue to warrant us either making another remake or even doing another prequel, kind of like what they did with Resident Evil 0.
Yeah, and the other thing to add into that, a lot of the rumors that they're actually hinting at with Resident Evil 3 being remade, a lot of it is just, tongue-in-cheek from Capcom, so it just could be them being tongue-in-cheek about it. But I can already tell you 2 franchises that are going to be heavily looked at in the next year or so. Resident Evil will be one of them because of the 2 remake, but also Devil May Cry because they did also announce DMC 5. So at that point, they are going to be looking at these franchises, and if they do well, then yeah, they might start looking at resurrecting old franchises and maybe doing one of them. Not necessarily, I know a lot of people want, like, let's just go down the line for Capcom. We're going to bring back everything. That's not necessarily what they want to do here. The other one I actually didn't think about was Mega Man. They want to see how Mega Man 11 does.
Yep, and the other thing to consider is that there have been a lot of these franchises that Capcom devs have mentioned, we would like to work on this. But that's the thing. Until the higher-ups who actually sign the paycheck say, okay, well, budget, give this much money to allow you to remake this or that or add it to this. I mean, a good example of it is the case where people have been clamoring, although in hindsight, I'm not quite sure why, they've been clamoring for some sort of new entry for Dino Crisis, not realizing that Dino Crisis as a series has not aged particularly well.
I don't know. Me and Alex are kind of pushing for a Dino Crisis remake. Oh, wait, we might have gotten one.
Yeah, but point being, it's a case where before people start saying, they're going to bring this back and going to bring this back, we have to remember kind of what's happened over the past few years from Capcom. They're on the upswing, but you have to remember, before that upswing, they were effectively getting clobbered, and a lot of their shady practices were coming back to bite them. Case in point, Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
This is true. Alex, what is your take on the Capcom situation? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? Do you see a whole lot coming from it?
I don't know. Maybe what I see most of all is just this being so successful is where Capcom's going to end up pouring a lot of their resources in then. Because it's like, well, there's your golden goose. That's what they're going to probably focus on for a while. Will it trickle down to littler projects? I don't know. Maybe. Again, there's so much in the air right now, and Capcom is trying to kind of rebound from the rough few years that they did have.
Yeah.
And we'll just really have to see. Right now, it's just more like, I feel like a lot of the success of Monster Hunter World is... Well, the success is going to just go back into continuing to improve and fund that game for a while. Resident Evil 2 remake, well, if that's super successful, then obviously there's a strong chance that Capcom will look into remaking another Resident Evil, like Resident Evil 3, or maybe one of their other side projects in the meantime. But as far as like completely unrelated other projects, we'll have to just really wait and see.
All right. And Shay, like, we're not quite sure. So this is your first time on the podcast, so we're not quite sure. Are you a Capcom fan or not?
Yeah, I've played a few of the Capcom games, and I've heard of a lot of them. Resident Evil being one of them, I believe. I played that game also.
So I guess like, the first thing that I need to get into is like, what are you like playing Monster Hunter World at all, or
I'm not.
I guess okay, all right, that's fine. the Monster Hunter franchise is kind of niche.
But I will say that with what it sounds like, as far as them coming back to redo Resident Evil 2 or doing another remake, and how they've been doing with Monster Hunter Worlds, just from me reading a lot of the comments of the article that was sent, it seems like a lot of the fans are excited because they feel like Capcom listen to their fans. And there's anything fans love to know when the companies that they love or admire listen to them and kind of take their ideas into consideration. And that's one of the things that I was reading that I saw. Now, like was mentioned, are they going to bring it down into other projects? Or if it does well, will they just keep pouring money into it? Which, if that happens, I can see them doing. I mean, if Resident Evil 2 does well with a remake, and since people were very open to it, and if it does very well, and they decide to do a 3 and so on and so forth, they might just keep doing that, because that's just like any business. I mean, even when you look at Disney, I mean, Frozen became their cash cow, and they threw everything at everybody Frozen because they knew that kids were going to eat it up, and parents were going to make sure their kids saw it. And then they were going to make a lot of money off of it, which did not backfire because they ultimately did. And I feel like Capcom will basically do the same thing if Resident Evil 2 takes off. And since it seems like Monster Hunter World is getting such a huge reception and the game's not even out yet, I can already see them like either coming out with more. And since it's also the whole style of like the game comes out, that's it. You don't have to buy any little extras. Like people are going to love that, because that's one thing a lot of people sometimes hate now is that you buy a game and then like 6 months down the road or months later, you're buying something extra because you have to, because there's not much else you can do with the game.
No, I mean,
to kind of correct something, the game is already out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, so that's where the sales numbers are coming. It was what was recently announced was the launch on PC.
Yeah, so the PC launch is really going to expand that market. That's what I'm thinking Capcom is banking on. Just curious though, did you see the Resident Evil 2 remake trailer?
I did not. No.
Oh my gosh, I might actually have to send you a link. I would be very interested to see what you think if you played past games, because that's looking amazing. Did you play Resident Evil 7 by chance?
No, I played the older ones.
Okay.
when they scared the heck out of everybody.
All right.
So those were the Resident Evils that I played. I was definitely a kid, and my brother like loved to play them because he knew that they would scare me just watching him play them.
So like the classic PlayStation ones then.
Right, the classic ones.
Okay, yeah, because I would actually be because here's the thing, like the 2 remake is basically taking what made 2 awesome, but then also adding that over the Resident Evil 7 engine, which a lot of people were in agreement last year, is the scariest Resident Evil they've put out in years. And in fact, I already know our panel, aside from one, would agree with that.
I still haven't beaten the game. I can't. I like sleep too much.
It's a good game when you can't sleep because it's so scary.
Shay, I had to and my wife, this is how my wife got into Resident Evil. I got so paranoid because of 7, I had to sit with her in the room with lights on and everything to play this game so that I could review it.
Oh, I'm so excited to watch this trailer.
This was well,
I'll send you excited.
So I'll send you the 7 some 7 gameplay and see what you think of it, but then I'll also send you the 2 trailer. So that we can kind of get your feeling of it, because that would be awesome. But yeah, no, this is legit survival horror's back, baby, kind of thing.
Oh,
but the other thing that we didn't actually consider is like Capcom. So Monster Hunter is a success for them. It's working out, but they already have another online franchise that or at least somewhat online, that they're trying to keep alive, which is Street Fighter. Street Fighter 5 currently is, I believe in the last numbers that I actually saw, it's probably the weakest if you don't count MVCI in there. Street Fighter 5 right now, numbers wise, is tanking compared to Monster Hunter World. Do we think this will affect Street Fighter? Like, will they go back to basics and try and do 6, or are they just kind of done with fighting games for a while?
Honestly, it's hard to say, and kind of part of the reason why Street Fighter 5,
There was a Resident Evil 5 too.
Yeah, and so basically with Street Fighter 5, and I've looked into this a little bit. Part of the reason it's struggling is one, the fighting game scene in terms of sales have gotten a lot more competitive because back in the day, Capcom was one of the few games in town. But I mean, when you look at the multiple games that Arc System Works has put out for multiple companies, I mean, when you look at the last Evo, in addition to Street Fighter 5, you had Guilty Gear Revelator, you had BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, which wasn't even out yet by that time, and then you also had a lot of these other franchises. I mean, Tekken is also a major competitor, Dragon Ball Fighter Z, another major competitor.
We're actually talking about the takeaway hit of 2018, which is Dragon Ball Fighters at this point.
Yeah, and so that's the case, and I think the biggest problem that kind of hobbled Street Fighter V that a lot of people in the fighting game community have pointed out is that they tried to copy the Killer Instinct model of rushing out the game so that it would be ready for tournaments, but not really having enough content to incentivize those of us who don't play these games to compete, but like to play them for the story, like to play them for fun. When you consider how bare bones the vanilla launch of Street Fighter V was, and how they've even recently had to mark down the arcade edition to $20 during a number of sales, the damage has kind of already been done on the Street Fighter front, especially now that there's like literally 5 other games that are doing much better by the fans. I mean, Tekken 7, basically Namco's like, okay, let's give a complete experience with the story mode, single player stuff. And then Arc Sys has mastered it with Dragon Ball Fighter Z and even BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. And then you even got Soul Calibur 6 coming out in September, which is also trying to offer a more complete experience. So that way they're not just catering to the esports crowd.
Yeah.
And I think that's something Capcom is starting to take to heart, especially when you consider how a lot of people also dropped Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, not just because they were rushing it out for the esports crowd, but also because a lot of fan favorite characters were missing because of Disney's perpetual pissing contest with Fox over the Fantastic Four and the X-Men.
Well, the other thing too, like I could honestly see some of this Monster Hunter World money getting filtered towards development of Street Fighter 6, because I've already heard talk that they are in early concept stages for it.
I doubt it.
5 has not been able to deliver the way they wanted.
I doubt they're going to call it Street Fighter 6. It's probably going to be called Super Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 5 Turbo or whatever extra edition. Again, fool me once, Capcom, with Street Fighter 4. Like, fool me once.
Yeah, how many times did we get like Street Fighter 5 as kind of the prototype name, and then it was Super Street Fighter 4? No, it was Ultra Street Fighter 4. No, it was Ultra Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and it just went down and down and down, and then finally we got Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, and so that's why, and that's probably the other problem, is that people see Capcom's pattern of, okay, let's wait to get into this game series until they actually release, the definitive version. That way we're not dropping $50 every so often. Yeah. And that's something Capcom really needs to work on, because that's kind of soured the well a little bit in terms of Street Fighter.
Well, and in a lot of cases where they said, well, no, you don't have to pay $50. You can buy it online for significantly cheaper. And even then it was like, I think the expansions to some of that stuff was still $20-25. So it was half that price. And at that point, a lot of people might have argued that it wasn't worth $20-25. It was probably worth $15-20 at that point.
I mean, again, Arc System Works has kind of the model in place of how to do it right with Guilty Gear Revelator. Because when Revelator came out and then they announced Revelator 2, instead of saying, oh, you have to buy this new game, it's a case of, oh, hey, you already bought Revelator? Here's just the extra content that's added in Revelator 2 that you can buy separately. That way you're not having to buy a new game. And so, again, Capcom, take notes from Arc System Works. They seem to understand something that you don't.
Yeah, something like that. So unfortunately, we got to wrap this story up so that we can get to the other stories, plus a discussion that we actually have. But it is good to hear that Capcom is doing well. I have a feeling that a lot of this is just going to fuel the Monster Hunter World crowd. Right now, that's probably one of the most popular franchises that Capcom has at the moment. So I have a feeling that'll go towards World. It might go towards the handheld games, all that stuff. Final thoughts before we move on into the next story. We're gonna save the discussion for a little later, but let's go ahead and get into the next story, which actually broke a week to 2 weeks ago, where but we weren't able to cover it. Basically, where Star Wars Episode 9, J.J. Abrams came out and announced the cast that's going to be featured, specifically who will be returning. So the first one that's going to be coming back is Billy D. Williams. He will be reprising his role as Lando Calrissian, which a lot of people were kind of wondering why on earth he wasn't there already. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pass this one because I know that a lot of people are going to be stoked on it. Mark Hamill will also be returning, so we know that we're probably going to get a Force Ghost version of Luke. That's going to be the way that it goes. That does kind of make sense. Anthony Daniels is going to be reprising his role as C-3PO, and then we also have Naomi Ackie and Richard E. Grant also joining the cast. But the biggest one that people wanted us to talk about specifically was Carrie Fisher. So people might remember that in 2016? Okay, when was it? 2016. December 2016. Oh, the dreaded year 2016. So many deaths. Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away in 2016 after she finished her scenes for episode 8. Now, we do know, according to testimony from both Rian Johnson as well as J.J. Abrams, there were scenes that did not utilize, or they didn't use in the films that featured Carrie Fisher. And so at that point, what we're being told is they're going to take some of these scenes that were already filmed, probably from Last Jedi, and we're going to have them in episode 9, and therefore Carrie Fisher is going to get a credit for it. So we have, I mean, we already have like a pretty good, like the episode 9 cast is going to be returning. You have the returning Billy D. Williams, you have Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels is coming back, and now we also have the returning Carrie Fisher. Hopefully she's not a zombie. That would be a definite plus.
Yeah, and the other important thing to remember is that these are using scenes already filmed, so we're not going to be seeing the return of the Butterface either.
No, we're not going to be having the Butterface Leia. We're not going to be doing that. Nor the Butterface talking.
No, and honestly, that is probably for the best. I'm sure fans would probably be absolutely livid if they tried anything like that. And so hopefully, with what they have, they can hopefully give the character of Leia a proper send-off that
yes,
at least adds to the story. Again, we don't know the specifics. We don't know the details of what Abrams has planned, or if they're even using ideas that were written by Colin Trevorrow. We don't know the details, but at the very least, that's one thing we can say is it's going to be using footage with the actual Carrie Fisher, no random CGI on top of a live person thing like they did in Rogue One.
The other thing that we can speculate is that the scenes that were done, they'll probably be worked around to make it make sense. So that'll probably also happen too. I have a feeling that Carrie Fisher's appearance is going to be something like a dream or something like a vision, where like we have clips of her saying these various things that they wanted to utilize in those episodes, but they weren't able to. Kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense for it. Alex, what's your take on a returning Carrie Fisher to episode 9?
It's going to be interesting to see how they can kind of rework it in. I already knew it wouldn't be CGI because they confirmed like a year ago that they weren't going to like do any CGI replacements for Carrie Fisher. So I kind of just figured they were going to kill her off screen or something. So I am just going to be real curious, really interested to see how they kind of rework some of the probably what would have probably been discarded footage otherwise to kind of give the character one more send off and write her out of the movie. Or, you know, again, also thinking of how they might kill her off screen, or they would probably do a quick last minute tweak to The Last Jedi to kill off Princess Leia. But no, they didn't, because Princess Leia did live through the end of The Last Jedi, so that certainly left a lot of questions. It's like, well, what are they going to do now?
Or what could possibly happen, I just barely got this from a buddy on Twitter, they could reprise the whole in-space role for Carrie Fisher officially unlocking God mode, and therefore destroying the entire universe so that it has to be remade again. So that way we get episode 20!
Or alternately, that could even be the lead into Rian Johnson's proposed new trilogy in a new galaxy. It's like, we said it was a new galaxy. We didn't specify that it's in a different part of the system. We just said it's a new galaxy.
Or maybe we'll have one of the, I don't know if you guys have seen these YouTube videos where they take that scene from Last Jedi and they funny it up a little bit. One of which made me laugh was they put like a Mary Poppins hat on her and put the umbrella in her hand and then had the scene play out. and or something like that. That's the one that's coming to mind. Shay, what's your take on the returning cast for episode 9, as well as Carrie Fisher? May she not be a zombie?
I'm actually also not surprised that they're gonna do something to somehow give her a proper send off through the movies. I mean, she's a main character. I mean, Princess Leia is a character so many people know of from Star Wars. Even if you were someone that just wasn't a fan of the series, you at least knew who Princess Leia was. And of course, they're going to do a proper send off. And also, I feel like it's also a great way to get a lot of people also to want to see it, because they're going to want to see how they do it. It perfectly reminds me of when the Fast and the Furious series had to come up with Fast and the Furious 7. And it was after Paul Walker died, and he's a main character. So everyone was like, how are you going to come out with Fast and Furious 7 where a main character is gone? So what are you going to do? And it got a lot of people to go see the movie, not only to see how they would actually, somehow get rid of his character in a tasteful way, but also how they were going to CGI up the film to where he was there, but even though you knew that he wasn't there. And that's how the film made a lot of money, because some people were like, I want to see how they give him a proper send-off. And I feel like that's exactly what they're going to do also for Star Wars, is they're going to be like, how do we give Princess Leia a really good send-off that's tasteful? I don't know if they would kill her on screen, because I feel like since she actually died, I feel like if they do that, some people are going to be like, so weird. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people
I'm just curious if you agree on this, because, obviously there's a lot of discussion with Last Jedi. A lot of people feel like an appropriate way to kill off Carrie Fisher's character would have been what happened with Laura Dern's character. That would have been the way to be able to do it. And now that Laura Dern's kind of taken that, they just can't see the character being killed off.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel the same way.
Yeah, honestly, and this is me kind of slipping into like speculative screenwriter mode, but I think probably the way they could do it, and I'm just imagining if they're sitting in the writer's room thinking, okay, maybe if we're trying to write away, maybe like what they could do is probably have the way Leia is killed off kind of be what jumpstarts the story of episode 9. I mean, when you consider where Rey was left off in terms of her character arc, and especially when you give the nature of like the Force and how the dark side is built on hate and a lust for vengeance, lust for power, you could probably write a case where you probably have her go out the same way that her father went out when they destroyed Alderaan. It's a case of, she was somewhat killed off screen, and it could be that grief of, this beloved character, this leader was killed off, and it could even be an exploration of even the power vacuum within the Resistance of, we lost our main leader, who's going to take over, who's going to be in charge, and that could be kind of what jumpstarts the story, what jumpstarts everything that happens.
Agreed. Yeah. But the other thing too that I also kind of want to get into with Shay as well is that a lot of the consensus also from Last Jedi is Mark Hamill's send off to it. A lot of people don't necessarily agree with that. I'm on the fence. I think they still did a lot to make him look pretty badass walking out of it, but I also kind of agree with a lot of people. Like, I didn't necessarily need him to be I didn't need him to pull an Obi-Wan, is what I'm saying. Like, he could have lived peacefully or something like that. And now we have the announcement of Mark Hamill coming back. Do we think that's also the motivation here, Shay? Do we think that they're going to give Luke the send-off that maybe the fans don't feel he got?
Yeah. I mean, of course, that's exactly what I feel. And that's why I feel like they would also have to do the same thing with Princess Leia. Because I feel like if they kill her off, I feel like that might make some people kind of angry if they kill her off, especially in like a strange way, because of the fact that the actual Carrie Fisher's actually dead. So it's like, you want to see the character in a way like live on. So if you were just to kill her off on the screen, like, while people understand that that's a way to get rid of the character, it's also a way of like, I don't know, I feel like it's like a cheesy way to kill off a character because you know that they're not going to come back, instead of giving the actress the respect and the character the respect that it ultimately deserves. So I also feel like because of that, they're also going to have to do Luke Skywalker, Hammond's character, exact same way, so that people can feel like that character has been respected.
I think you can kill off Leia still, but like with the other fans, she has to go out swinging. That's the way it has to go. So like, if she was to say like take a ship and ram it into a First Order ship, I'd be okay with that, because that would make sense, kind of like the Laura Dern thing. It would make a lot of sense. Luke, however, actually kind of fuels theories I've been reading about episode 9 that I kind of hope come to pass, because there's only one way that Luke can come back. He's a Force ghost. So at that point, does that mean we're going to get what a lot of fan theories have speculated, that this is going to be based on what would possibly happen if a Sith Lord became a Force ghost, and what would happen there with the first ever being what's his name? Supreme Snoke. Yeah, Supreme Leader Snoke being the first ever like Sith Force ghost, and having Luke kind of contend with him. Do you think there's validity to that, any of you?
That's too fan service. I don't see them trying to pull that sort of thing off, especially when you consider the focus of the new trilogy. Yes, we're writing out the old guard, but the focus is going to stay on the new trio, Rey, Finn, and Poe, trying to do this whole elaborate, this like battle of Force ghosts. I don't see them pulling it off in the movie. At least not with the direction. I mean, honestly, and they've even played around with the idea of a Sith-based Force ghost. When you look at some of the concept art for The Force Awakens, and how they even considered bringing back Hayden Christensen to kind of be the ghost of Vader. It was a concept in the very early drafts. They even did concept art, which looked kind of cool, of the whole notion of him being kind of torn between Vader and Anakin, but they scrapped it because they realized, that kind of delegitimizes what Return of the Jedi did, where he came back to the light. What's the point of us doing that? Well,
and the other problem, too, is from what I understand, Hayden was approached with at least some kind of a concept to be able to do something like this. He refused because, unfortunately, he doesn't have the best reception from the Star Wars fan base. So at that point, he's not looking to do them any favors.
Yeah, because I've seen some interviews where he's somewhat open to it, but very much in the case of, it's very much, I'm guessing he probably turned it down, not because of the fan base, but because it would have just been a glorified cameo, which some of the actors agreed to. I know Ewan McGregor agreed to it in The Force Awakens, where he did a vocal cameo. I learned about this because James Arnold Taylor, who does the voice of Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars series, initially recorded the lines, but then got told, we don't need your lines anymore because we got the real guy.
Yeah. Alex, what's your take on the kind of your final take on the situation as a whole? Like, do you like the ideas that are being brought up with Carrie as well as Mark? And maybe if you want to add in, like, how can they bring in Lando to this? Like, is Lando the leader at this point? That's the other thing that we probably should ask. He was General Calrissian.
That would make sense, is Lando having to take charge of the First Order with Leia's absence.
You mean the Resistance, right? Because that would be a very weird plot twist.
Leia was working for the First Order all along.
I mean, honestly, it would be a nice callback to Empire Strikes Back if they got to Lando first.
Yeah, true. Poor Billy D. Poor Lando. Like, I
could just see him going like, "Hi, everybody, I'm."
No, better one. It's like, "Hi, everybody," and you just see Chewie go,
"Easy there, Chewie. Easy."
Yeah, I bet the Resistance, not the First Order. Good grief. That is sort of an interesting way. So, but of course, that would probably mean they'd have to kill off Leia fairly early, or he'd have to take up the role fairly late.
Yeah,
it's really going to be interesting to see what they could also do with Lando's character. I don't know why they've waited this long to bring him back. He should have been back as in the second movie at least.
I'll just be honest. Like, I looked at Billy D. Williams, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy that he's coming back. But I can't help but look at this and go, oh, they're going to point this back to Solo in some way. And we're probably going to have that moment where Lando and Chewie are piloting the Falcon. And that's going to be like the closest thing to Return of the Jedi we can get. And that's all that they have planned. Maybe at some point, Leia gives Lando the dice. And he's just the one that keeps the dice from here on in. I don't know. That's definitely something. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much hit the nail on the head. So moving on into the next story, unless we have some final thoughts on it. The next story that we have is a little bit more anime related, so Alex can get off my case about how I never put in the anime stories.
Well, you don't, so.
See, guys, that's never going to end.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, I try very hard, but there are just some stories that get eclipsed after a while. So this one actually got announced last week. week, Alex?
Was it? Well, on the 30th, so
yeah.
essentially.
So it would have been this Monday. So if people don't already know, Digimon is actually Digimon is in its 20-year anniversary as of 2017. So we're kind of in that 21-year anniversary. But they made a very awesome announcement from the official website Gekijoban, or the Digimon Adventure website, where we're going to be getting a new anime film project for the Digimon Adventure anime. So for those who are a little confused about this, this is season 1. So season 1 is going to get a new movie. And no, it's not just an edition of the Tri OVAs that are coming out. This is going to be a brand spanking new movie that is set years later, probably into the 02 arc, as we're going to be getting, according to these portraits, adult versions of Tai, or Tai Kamiya, or what's his actual name? Taichi Yami? Or Taichi Yagami.
Taichi Yagami.
And also Yamato Ishida, aka Matt, from the original series. And here's the link for you, Shay. So you can check that out too. So here are the portraits of Tai and Matt going into this new film. We've already confirmed it's not Tri. Tri is its own thing. This is going to be what we're guessing is either building up to that last episode that season 2 had, or it's going to be after the 02 ending. So at that point, we're going to get adult versions of these guys probably dealing with a Digimon-related problem. I'm just going to be honest here, guys. I like the idea. I like the idea because I'm kind of one of those people that thinks that the 02 or the season 2 ending was kind of lackluster. And they did a lot of things wrong with it. And at that point, I feel like that is definitely something that they could have improved on. They could have fixed. So having a movie based on the adult versions of the original cast is appealing to me. They just better fix the 02 problem of... I can't even say it.
Well, to be fair,
Sora.
Well, to be fair, considering that, the first movie in Digimon Tri, although we missed it when we went to see it, but I looked up the scene later, it literally opens with the silhouettes of characters from 02 being killed off. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. Like, if you know who they are in the silhouettes, it's just like, okay, they've made it clear, yep, this is a separate continuity.
Okay, so they're basically establishing the Digimon Adventure cinematic universe is basically what they're doing here.
Yeah, it's kind of like the rebuild of Ava films, where it's a case of, hey, this is the same characters, but we're going in a separate direction. Do not try to
Romney, I'm going to cut you off right then and there, because if you say it's like the rebuild series, we are never, ever, ever going to get part 4 of this thing. It's just never going to happen.
No, I mean,
in another year or two, maybe.
Maybe.
And by 1 or 2, you mean 10?
After a couple of Godzilla movies.
Yeah, I rest my case. It's never happening. So Shay, after seeing some of these portraits, like what is your take on a brand new Digimon Adventure film? Like not an OVA series like Tri, a film.
I'm excited because I remember watching the first Digimon movie and absolutely loving it. And I was a Pokemon kid, and I still am a Pokemon kid, but I love the Digimon movie. And to have them once again come back, but as adults, makes it even better, because then if you're watching it as an adult, it's like seeing these characters grow up kind of with you, especially if you were a kid at the time. And to me, it's kind of like they're doing something that Pokemon has not yet done.
I was gonna say
Ash as an adult. Everybody else, right? Like he's like just infinitely gonna be 10 forever. So now
he just went more derpy.
Right. He just kind of looks a little different. But to now have these characters as adults, I'm so excited for it. It's kind of cool. Also, like if you have kids, to show them the first Digimon movie, and then like, okay, now let's watch it again, but now they're adults. Like it's great.
Well, so it sounds to me like have you not seen the Digimon series seasons at all?
I saw the as far as like the Tri series is concerned, or the
original.
Yes, I saw the original Digimon series.
Okay,
I saw the original. Yeah, I saw like I saw maybe the first 2 seasons, and then after that, I kind of came in when the kids themselves were becoming the Digimon, and then I kind of lost interest at that point because it kind of took me in a whole different direction.
So you didn't get traumatized by Tamers, and then you came in with Digimon. What was it?
Frontier.
Frontier was what it was called.
I saw the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, I remember because Frontier is actually my favorite season of
Same
the
here.
anime. And yeah, you're not alone. Season 3, it turned a lot of people off because Saban was like a case of this series got really dark and weird. What the hell are we going to do with this show?
Yeah,
and
that's
still be
the
allowed
weird
to air
thing.
it?
Is like as a kid, I would not have enjoyed Tamers, but as an adult, I'm weirdly fascinated by it.
Well, and speaking someone who was a kid when Tamers was airing, of course, it probably didn't help that episodes either got skipped or aired out of order when I was trying to watch it. It had me for the first few episodes, but then it just got too weird.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah. I think I was like 11 when I saw Tamers on television briefly, and I was like, I'm so confused.
I would have been like 12, I think, when Tamers hit the air for me, because that was like that was that weird transition period between me and the
I remember
end of sixth
specifically
grade.
you were watching Tamers, I was not, and so you were showing me episodes.
Yeah, it was that weird transitional period because I was going out of 6th grade and into 7th, and so.
Well, I guess that puts me as the youngest one here because I was still in elementary school for both 3 and 4, and I remember watching season 4 when it was in syndication back when UPN was a thing.
Yeah.
They would always air it like in the UPN block out here in Utah. They would air it after the Tarzan cartoon, and so those are kind of the memories that I have. And so, yeah,
Frontier I came across by accident. I honestly thought Tamers killed it. I thought for a long time, I thought Tamers killed Digimon. And so at that point, when I heard there was a season 4, I think Alex, either you or my wife were the ones that brought it to my attention. I'm like, I don't believe you. And then I accidentally came across a Frontier episode. I'm like, wow, there is a 4th season of Digimon. And it actually has a really cool idea. The kids becoming the Digimon kind of thing. And keep in mind, guys, I did not watch Tamers all the way through as kid as I was going to be. So I didn't know that the bio-merging thing happened there. This was when I'm like, oh, this is actually a really cool idea because I hadn't ever seen any of that stuff. But back into this film, what are at the bare minimum, like what's our expectations here? What do we think that they're actually going to get into?
I have no idea. I don't think they're really going to acknowledge the whole I don't think they're going to acknowledge 02 at all, or how 02's ending. They'll grow up, have jobs, and have kids. I don't think that's going to be a thing.
No, because here's the thing: like the Ty and the Matt portrait that we have here, gotta be like 20s.
Yeah,
They can't have kids at this point. Shay, you had a thought?
Like, I really hope that the whole issue that they have going on is like a little bit more darker themed, I guess, or I hope it's a more darker themed a little bit, just because of the fact that their audience has also grown up in a lot of ways. Their audience isn't the same kids that watched it before. And I kind of hope it starts off with like Agumon like busting into like Ty's workplace. Like, I really hope that that's how it starts out, with him like busted through a door and like Ty having to explain.
We're having a problem in the digital world. Oh, French fries.
Right. Like, I really hope that happens, and to where he's like completely caught off guard. Or I even hope that it's like his child, or if he has any kids, comes across the digital world and they have to enlist their parents to help, or something of that matter. Like, that's kind of what I'm hoping, but we'll see, because they probably are still going to try and like market it towards kids.
Well, you're not entirely wrong. I have heard a lot of theories, especially from interviews of the monster designer for Digimon, basically saying that a lot of the designs that they're looking at are fairly complex and actually are going to be leaning towards a little darker. So at that point, that probably is going to befit those who watched Digimon as a kid and are now grown up.
Well, yeah. The other thing to consider is that Digimon has kind of gone through a period of brand confusion as well, because I think the people at Bandai kind of realized that they can't compete with Pokemon. They realized, okay, that's not the audience we're able to hit. Pokemon is way too powerful. I mean, especially when you look at the recent games like the Hacker's Memory series and how they're kind of trying to cater it towards the Persona sort of crowd, and think, okay, let's try skewing a little older, since that seems to be a better way to go. And so whether or not they're going to try to appeal to kids, it's hard to say, since I think they've come to the realization that it hasn't really worked. But then again, I could be wrong, because I've heard that they're that the apps that they have for smartphones in Japan have been having moderate success. But I think that's kind of the big identity crisis that Bandai is tackling with Digimon is, okay, who is the big audience? Which one should we really tailor it to? And that's kind of why they're extending the nostalgia gambit that they did with Tri, because they realized, okay, Tri seemed to work pretty well. So clearly aiming this towards older fans seems to be paying off, especially considering I think
we could also look at Tri as kind of an experiment to see like how to cater this new film to which demographic should we aim it towards.
Yeah, and especially considering I think they're on like the third Hackers Memory games as well, because I know there's two. Yeah. I think there's a third one on the way if it hasn't come out already. And so it's like they're trying to kind of finally find their niche, and so they're kind of settling into the same niche that people come to games like Shin Megami Tensei, for example. They're kind of trying to cater to that niche of, okay, well, we have these digital monsters, but we realize we can't compete with Pokemon and nobody buys Gigapets anymore. So here's our niche, maybe.
Yeah. Now here's
so weird because I saw like a new version of Tamagotchi Pets last Christmas at work.
Well, no, we reported on it. The Tamagotchi was putting out new Tamagotchis out of Anniversary, and then I got tons of hate mail because I had to admit on camera that yes, I didn't take care of my Tamagotchi, and I'd probably kill this one too.
Yeah,
it's okay. I killed mine also.
I guess
it's kill them at one point. I mean, it's the effort that counts, and Drek doesn't put effort into it.
Tamagotchi are digital goldfish; they always die.
Yeah. Plus, if you have a parent that makes you put it on mute every night before you go to sleep so that you can't hear it cry, like of course it's going to be dead by the time you get up the next morning because you can't take care of it.
The problem that Alex is giving me crap over is that, well, it doesn't take a whole lot, and especially as a kid, it did not take a whole lot to divert my interest and have the ADHD kick in, and at that point, like, it'd die because I wouldn't be interested. So, I mean, that happened, but you know, that's just the thing. The other thing I want to bring up, because in discussion with this, obviously, the second they announced this film, the rumor mill started turning on like what could you possibly do, and there was an interesting idea being pitched that I want to bring to you guys. I didn't know this, but apparently there's a consensus that the best villain throughout all of Digimon, at least according to a lot of Digimon fans, never got his proper ending. He never got a proper final battle or anything like that. And so a lot of people are looking at this film and going, okay, this actually might be a really great way to give a final battle with Myotismon. Now, the reason that they say that he never got that proper send-off is that he, like the end of the season where he was done in should have been the way that it ended, but then we had an additional episode where the mega forms were unlocked, and at that point, a lot of people feel like Myotismon kind of got given the shaft because the Dark Masters arc was considered to be better, at least, than what Myotismon got. Then eventually, they got the 0-2 arc where it looked like Myotismon had been kind of plotting all this stuff all along, and that's what led up to the final battle in season 2. Is this something that we want to see? Do we want to see a return of Myotismon and have a proper final battle with him?
I'd be up for it. I mean, I always thought his season 2 exit was pretty weak.
I'm torn on it because here's the thing. Unlike a lot of the Digimon fan base, I like the Mega episode. I liked what they did with it because they did hint at him being like this Cthulhian horror as he showed up literally at the number of the beast. So at that point, he came to destroy the world at the designated time. And the only thing that could have saved them was going to those mega forms. But I will also agree that a lot of people, with a lot of people, that the 0-2 reveal of Myotismon being the villain was kind of weird. Especially since they didn't really hint at that. They didn't go into the past to explain Myotismon or anything like that. And you had a perfect way to go through that with Gatomon kind of explaining it. She did serve the guy. So at this point, I would like to at least see what they would do with the idea.
If not Myotismon, then maybe go back to Apoclymon, because that was also kind of another sort of rushed boss fight at the end of season 1.
Yeah. Shay, what's your take on it? Like, should they bring back Myotismon or do you feel like he got his proper send-off?
I I'm kind of for them bringing up like a whole new villain.
That would be cool too.
I mean, I feel like it would be pretty. I mean, it would be pretty cool if it had like a whole new villain, or to be in a strange way. I would also kind of love it if they actually brought back the villain from the first movie. I mean, in a strange way, even though that villain they definitely killed off. But,
Diaboromon.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a strange way, like even if they brought him back, I think I would be strangely okay with it, just because it is a movie and that character was, you know, a movie villain.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be kind of cool to be like, oh god, that villain's back, and it dealt with the whole internet and all that other stuff. So since we're in like that whole internet age where it's such a big thing now, that it would be kind of cool.
You might not be wrong. I mean, Toriyama's bringing back Broly, so
it's an interesting idea, but
it's
a very interesting idea. But I can't help but think it'll just again draw comparisons to Summer Wars. I mean, Summer Wars already draws comparisons to Digimon the movie because it pretty much is Digimon the movie.
I got a solution.
It's almost like they have the same director or something.
I was actually going to say I have a perfect solution for that. They ought to announce that Mamoru Hosoda is actually going to be directed. Wait. Crap.
Yeah. Well, given some of his stances on the way certain episodes are written, I don't think Bandai wants to take that risk.
No, probably not. So final thoughts on this one before we move into the next story, because it's great and all that we're going to be getting a brand spanking new movie, but well, I want my last part of Try before I'm getting remotely excited about this thing. I want to see how Try ends. I literally have only seen episode 1, and it's just because I'm waiting until the OVAs are out so that I can marathon them and see how that actually plays out.
Yeah, I think we're getting a set real soon.
Cool. Well, I won't have to worry about a set. Your sister will go out and buy them. So like at that point, I'm good. I don't even like. I'm not even kidding, Shay. She just will go out. She'll ninja buy them. I'm like, oh, did you get Try? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay.
Sound like my dad with movies.
Yeah, pretty much. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story before our big discussion. And this one is another big anniversary announcement, as Power Rangers is looking to celebrate their 25th anniversary. And this got announced earlier this week, where we are going to be getting a big spark for the 25th anniversary, or rather the introduction of Super Ninja Steel. Where we're going to be getting a monumental, that's their words, not mine, a monumental crossover, bringing back a lot of the old cast into Super Ninja Steel. We're not sure if it's for a Legendary War, because it's going to be a mid-season premiere, but we're going to get a lot of returning faces. And the first ones that they revealed was Jason David Frank is going to be returning as Tommy, as the original Green Ranger. They also announced that Kat Hillard is going to be coming back for the first time as Catherine, the Pink Turbo Ranger. And finally, Jason Font, who played the Red Time Force Ranger, is also going to be coming back. These were the first reveals, but they did say that more iconic Rangers from past seasons will be announced in coming weeks. So at that point, and I've already given you the link, Shay. So we have already big announcements with Jason David Frank, Kat Hillard, and Jason Font. I mean, obviously, we got to go to our resident Power Rangers fan here. What is your take on the Super Sentai crossover event that we're going to be getting?
Well, you mean the Power Rangers crossover event. I mean, unless they decided to actually approach Bandai and do a crossover with Super Sentai, that would be impressive.
Sorry, I meant Super Ninja Steel, sorry.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not that excited. It's hard for me to really get excited. Honestly, I'm getting kind of a Once a Ranger vibe from all of this, in the case of, oh, we're going to bring back the old cast members who will return our phone calls just for the sake of fan service. It's just, I find it hard to get excited for any sort of these team-ups when you consider the fact that Saban kind of treated a lot of these alumni like crap, which is why a lot of them will steadfastly refuse to return. I mean, a lot of people think, "Oh, are we going to get Austin St. John back?" No, he's made it clear he's not interested. David Yost has made it clear he's not coming back because, again, it was a horrific experience for him. And
I think also Johnny Young Bosch is confirmed he probably won't because he's too busy at this point.
Well, yeah, it's not even a busy thing. This was something that actually came up at the panel at the very first Salt Lake Comic-Con, when they asked this of David Yost and of Walter Jones, when they asked, oh, are you interested in doing the team-ups? And here's the thing. Firstly, Power Rangers is a non-union show, and a lot of these actors that were in Power Rangers have since joined the Screen Actors Guild. And it's a case of where they would have to pay to leave the union and then travel to New Zealand to shoot these episodes, and then come back and then pay to join the union again. And the fact that Saban wouldn't be reimbursing them for travel is the other key point of distinction. I mean, Saban as a company, I mean, as much as I love Power Rangers, they kind of are messed up in terms of how they kind of nickel and dime a lot of these returning guest stars, in the case that they don't reimburse them for travel, they don't offer accommodations. A lot of these actors are having to pay for this out of their own pockets.
Like in Jason David Frank's case, where he's doing it simply out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah, whereas, because that's why Johnny Young Bosch has stated that he can't do it, because it's a case of, hey, they won't pay, I have to fly out to New Zealand, which is not cheap. Now, I mean, that's why and so, I mean, if people are like, oh yeah, I'm excited, but I'm a case of, okay, is this going to go well? Which, let's face it, these legacy anniversary seasons have always had bad luck. When you even go all the way back to Wild Force and how they've tried to do these like monumental team-ups. I mean, when you look at Forever Red and how lackluster it was, when you look at Once a Ranger and how disappointing it was, I honestly just find it hard to be excited because, well, Saban doesn't have the greatest track record with these anniversary episodes, and it doesn't help that they treat a lot of these former actors like crap.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the one disappointing thing out of it. I mean, I love the fact that Jason David Frank is willing to do this out of the goodness of his heart. I mean, I'm not sure his active schedule by any means, but the fact that he is willing to embrace that, you know, this is a part of his career and he's willing to do it. I mean, for crying out loud, I love that he out of the goodness of his heart did the Shattered Grid trailer, when I think that was kind of the same deal, but it was an indie project.
Well, yeah,
so
it could be shot closer to home since it was on a smaller set. And so, I mean, it's exciting, but the other thing to consider is, it's just, how are you going to make this work? Because they did a lot of logical leaps to try to make Once a Ranger make sense. And as I even mentioned in my review of the Power Rangers movies before the reboot movie came out, trying to force a continuity on a series that has long since abandoned it doesn't really work. I mean, Forever Red struggled with it. Once a Ranger struggled with it. It's a continuity nightmare. Yeah.
Well, and even the legendary war that we got, it had its own slew of issues. Like, they had to bring people out in shifts and be able to film them properly. Alex and Shay, what is your take on the 25th anniversary merger that the episode that they're looking to do by bringing back a lot of older Power Rangers? I guess the first question we should ask is, Shay, are you a fan of Power Rangers at all?
I am. I watched the original Power Rangers as a kid. I didn't follow it as far as like the newer series were concerned, but I did know of like Johnny Young Bosch. I knew of course Jason David Frank and everybody else, Walter Jones, of course, because I was obsessed, and I was also obsessed with the Pink Ranger. I was her for Halloween when I was 5.
Nice.
So I loved it. So I'm not excited just because of the fact that as far as the ones that I know of or remember have said they're not going to do it. So as far as the only one I really know of is Jason David Frank that is going to do it. And also just because of the fact I don't blame a lot of these actors who have said they don't want to do it, mostly because I've heard a lot of them talk about how they were done wrong by Saban and by the company overall. I mean, I've heard about how a lot of them didn't find out they were kicked off the show until they read in a newspaper that they were holding auditions and stuff of that matter, and how scheduling was and all that other stuff. So I feel like that because of they treated them like that, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth with them wanting to come back on a show that treated them how it was. So it wasn't like happy memories of being on the show. So I'm not too excited about it. I would have been more excited if they would have announced another Power Rangers movie. I would have been more excited about that.
Well, that actually kind of goes into one of the other rumors that people were kind of disappointed in. And even though it got disproven pretty early on, a lot of people were hoping for the 25th or even the 30th anniversary that a live action or some kind of connection to the Shattered Grid comic that was going to be coming out at that time was going to be done, specifically because, and we can already see Romney kind of rubbing his temples here. a lot of people want to see Tommy or Jason David Frank play Lord Drakon, which is, if you don't know, Shay, and I'm sorry for spoiling this, it's basically an alternate universe Tommy where he decided to stay evil. And so at that point, it's like a weird fusion of the Green Ranger as well as the White Ranger coming together in like a really evil way. So a lot of people were hoping, especially since he did a Shattered Grid trailer, that he would become Lord Drakon and threaten the current Ranger team. But as one of the things that disproved this pretty early on is that while Saban likes what they did on a principle or on a basis, it's not canon as far as they are concerned.
Not to mention it would be an issue in regards to the rights and royalties as well, because here's the other thing to consider is that Saban is producing this series as cheaply as possible. So if they were to do Lord Drakon, you would have to create a new suit, you would have to create new props, you would have to shoot new action scenes, which also wouldn't be cheap. And it's a case where I'm pretty sure Saban wouldn't want to bankroll that sort of thing. Now, if a character like Lord Drakon had existed in the original Sentai or in Ace, no, it would have to be in the original Sentai because Saban doesn't have the rights to adapt any of the Sentai movies that are released in Japan. Like, they got lucky with Clash of the Red Rangers, but then Toei kind of put their foot down. But it's a case where...
But a lot of people don't necessarily get that, like, yes, while Power Rangers has created unique Power Rangers that aren't in continuity, for example, the Titanium Ranger in Lightspeed Rescue is a unique thing only to Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. It's not easy to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider the Spirit Rangers in Jungle Fury, the other American exclusive team. And so a lot of what happens is that if Bandai wanted to, they probably could say, hey, Bandai, can you do us a solid and help fund this? And they'd be like, okay, what new toy are we getting out of it? And that would be the only way I can see them trying to bring Lord Drakon, is if they go to Bandai saying, hey, Bandai, can you fund it? And it's like, you got a new toy for us to sell?
And that's kind of the issue that we come across.
Because that's what happened in Forever Red. That's why we got the Wild Force Rider. That was the entire reason we got that dang motorcycle, was because Bandai's just like, yeah, we'll fund it if you promote a new toy.
And then we got a really, really ugly looking blow up Super Serpentera based on CG. I don't even know how to explain it other than that. It looked like a blow up pool toy on camera. It really did. It looked like a blow up pool toy. And it got destroyed by a motorcycle.
Yeah.
There's no Serpentera.
Yeah. Again, that's the thing with these shows. And so honestly, trying to tie it to Shattered Grid just wouldn't make financial sense.
No.
And although there were team-up episodes in the original Sentai Shurikenja, it doesn't really tie into any of the seasons we know as Power Rangers that would have any of the actors they've announced, because they had 3 crossover episodes. So this wasn't like a special movie. These were special episodes where they brought back cast members from previous Sentai. So they had a crossover with Hurricaneger, which is the basis for Ninja Storm. They had a crossover with Kaku Ranger, which is the basis for the Aquitian Rangers. And they've even had crossovers with Maji Ranger, oddly enough, because it was a case of, hey, well, we're coming on the anniversary in Japan. And so although there is footage they can use, I mean, unless they can get the right kind of people back to make use of that footage, I
think you've already kind of figured out at least one of them, because the green Mystic Force Ranger is, I believe, a New Zealand native. So
but the problem is the problem is the footage uses the yellow Maji Yellow. Not
well,
Maji
then already
Green.
you're screwed.
Yeah, you're already kind of screwed there. I mean, with Ninja Storm, if you can get people back, you could pull it off. You could probably even pull off having someone playing just an Aquitian saying, oh, I'm the new Aquitian Red Ranger, and using the Kaku Ranger footage. But then when you get to some of the other crossovers, like their Jiraiya crossover, that's a character that hasn't been established in a Saban series that, point being, I mean, it's hard to get excited because it's a logistical nightmare trying to pull off these crossover anniversary team-up episodes.
Pretty much. Now, we actually did get an interesting idea brought up in our live chat. So basically, they want to add in the old Rangers digitally by using old footage to add to the campiness. And I'm sorry, but the first thought that came to my mind when Jiro the Hero suggested this was, you want Butterface Rangers?
I'm not
Jiro? You want Butterface Rangers?
He might actually just be talking about splicing in actual old footage, because I
got what he meant. I got what I meant, but I had an ADD moment as soon as that happened.
Well, honestly, with you wouldn't really get the Butterface Rangers because they're wearing the helmets. You wouldn't see their faces, so it would actually work pretty well.
So basically, Butterface helmets
with glitter.
Damn it! You had to bring up the damn glitter. And then we'll have Butterface, Rita, and Lord Zed because we have to have them come back.
Thing is, with Lord Zed, it makes sense. His face is already metal. The Butterface works on things that aren't supposed to be living and breathing.
I have heard the original one is like already auctioned off to its prospective buyers, but the movie one is still out there.
They're not going to use the movie one, and I can tell you straight.
I like that one.
I can tell you straight up. Literally, the whole reason the first Power Rangers movie, is not canon was because 20th Century Fox, and this is still a contract in effect, literally says, okay, if you use any of the characters, ideas, costumes, props, anything that we use for the movie, you have to pay us a royalty. And so that's why Saban had to shoot the entire Ninja Quest 3-parter while they were in New Zealand, was because, well, crap, if we use anything from the movie, we have to pay Fox this royalty. We can't afford to pay Fox this royalty. We have to shoot something new. That's why even the Tengas got a downgrade in visuals, because they couldn't use any old costumes, props, or anything made for the movie, because they wanted to use the new command center, but they couldn't because they would have to pay Fox. And so,
God damn it, Fox, you ruined everything.
Yeah, so literally, if they wanted to use the
they're gonna ruin Disney. Is that what you're saying?
Well, Disney's gonna ruin them.
Well, I mean, Disney. It wouldn't be the first time Disney's ruined something that was initially started at Fox.
And already I could see a red dot on Romney's forehead because he talked bad about Disney. Hey, it's not me this time.
Yeah, but honestly, though, it's a case that's why. So if you're hoping, they'll use the movie version of Lord Zed helmet, I can tell you straight up, no, because they're not going to pay that royalty to Fox. Because Fox they still own the rights to both Turbo and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. The reason the royalty agreement doesn't apply to Turbo was because Saban funded it and Fox just distributed it. So I can tell you straight up, anything from that movie, it's not coming in. So no Ivan Ooze either, because that was one thing people were hoping was.
Well, technically the actor died too, so you can't necessarily do that, because I think it was Paul Fielding that played him, and AKA, if you guys didn't know this, the Nazi who got his face melted off in Raiders, same guy.
Yeah, but point being, even if they use the character or any ideas, they would have to pay Fox that royalty, and so anything tied to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, that's been given the axe.
All right. Well, we actually still do have a discussion topic. So final thoughts on this one. I am looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with it. I'm not expecting a whole lot, just because of the things that Romney has kind of stated. Budget's going to be a problem. A lot of these actors aren't willing to make the long flight to New Zealand, especially if it's on their own dime. Stuff like that. So I already see that's going to be a problem. So final thoughts before we move on into the discussion topic. Okay, so our discussion topic, as I kind of teased to Shay, is kind of up her alley, and there's a reason being. Like, one of the series that I actually do like from her that I recommend that you guys check out is her Motivational Mondays. Now, it kind of got discontinued. She does it from time to time, but I do love the Motivational Mondays because I think there's a lot of really good messages there. And, well, we had an unfortunate incident that happened that I think we need to get some positives out of. I actually just barely found this out yesterday, and I've reported it to you guys via our Facebook group. But unfortunately, we've hit kind of the extreme. We've talked about this a lot during this year of fandoms basically kind of getting wrecked right now, either because of fandom kind of killing itself off, or because of the fact that things like that ever so great politics getting brought into fandoms as a whole. And we, a lot of us on the panel have kind of made our opinions clear that like this shouldn't happen. But unfortunately, we just hit the extreme of what could possibly happen and what could possibly go wrong. As I reported on this guy a couple of times on the podcast, not necessarily going into too many of his stories, but Jeremy Hambley, a YouTuber that owns the channel Unsleeved Media as well as The Quartering, was actually on his way to Gen Con, which is a role-playing convention for those who don't necessarily know what it is. There's a lot of tabletop role-playing. I do believe games and other things show up there. But when he actually hit Gen Con, he was at a bar that he was just visiting with Gen Con staff as well as doing a fan meetup. And the unfortunate happened where a person that doesn't necessarily agree with Jeremy on a lot of the things that he thinks of decided to poke him in the back and go, "Are you Jeremy?" And he said yes. And when he turned around to shake his hand, he was met with a punch to the face. And in turn received about 9 more as he proceeded to kind of beat the crap out of Jeremy outside this bar, where it took 3 guys to be able to pull this guy off of Jeremy so that he could get a breath of fresh air. And when the guy had no longer access to be able to punch Jeremy, he punched the window of the bar so that they've got a nice big cracked piece of glass there as well. And obviously this freaked out Jeremy to some extent, to the point where he actually did consider leaving, and he had some scheduled panels and everything like that that he needed to attend. He was actually going to cancel on them because he just didn't feel safe anymore, and Gen Con wasn't willing enough to do anything. In fact, the bar wasn't even willing to call the cops to be able to get a proper police report filed, and the cop that came down after he insisted didn't necessarily file a police report. So this is a complicated situation all around. Thankfully, it's pretty much on its way to being solved, as fans, as well as people who didn't necessarily agree with the guy, did help Jeremy to be able to figure out who assaulted him and give him enough information so that they could file a proper police report and get that going. So that the situation has technically resolved in that respect.
Not necessarily, because there was another part of the story that broke earlier yesterday, where it's a case where, yes, he's been identified, yes, the report has been filed, but what hasn't been helping is that Gen Con is effectively trying to silence anybody who's trying to discuss the attack or bring up the attack, or even getting the person reported to the police. So it's a case where, yeah, of all the things you could do as a convention, you're doing all the wrong things, Gen Con. I mean, it's dumb,
especially when somebody actually dug out the rules for the panelists as well as the guests there. And technically this assaulter broke 5 out of the 6 rules. And so technically, and the only reason that we know he was at Gen Con was when he assaulted Jeremy Hambley, he had a 4-day Gen Con pass around his neck. So at that point we knew he was there, and later we were able to identify the guy. Now, people know this on the podcast. I talk about a lot of things. I avoid the politics on the podcast. Why? Because again, a lot of us have 9-to-5s and we're coming to talk geek stuff. So I know a lot of people don't like it when I do this, but I am going to kind of narrow the focus here a little bit, just because I don't want to necessarily have the political stuff come in. We don't need that. But what I did want to bring this up is, at least in this aspect, okay, we can all have disagreements. I can guarantee on this panel, I've had disagreements. Well, I've had known disagreements with Alex. Like they've happened on camera. I've had disagreements with Romney that have been able to happen. I think Shay and me had a disagreement on the Shonen Anime episode that we did where we disagreed on one of those protagonists. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure those happened. But I think we can all come together and agree on one simple thing, is that we can solve these things in a lot of ways. Violence it isn't even the last resort. It's definitely something we should never resort to. Okay. It is an absolute no-no, because it never solves the situation. It makes the one guy feel better, but then it has consequences for him or her later on. So, and in this case, this guy is going to have some consequences, because we do technically know who this guy is. I'm not going to reveal it because I'm at least trying to be, non-biased on it, but we do know who he is, and he's got some repercussions coming his way, not just legally, but also in his business life. So those are going to be happening very soon for him. But the focus that I want to kind of stick to is the fact that we have violence already happening because people simply disagree with each other on 1 or 2 issues. And obviously that's not cool. And this is actually a discussion that listeners brought up to us a while ago, and I couldn't fit it in anywhere. So here's the discussion. In light of recent events involving these attacks, physical, mental, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, because these happen, on geeks for simply having opposing opinions, how can we as geeks help to fix the current climate of the fandoms to be more welcoming to new and old geeks alike? So I know that was pretty worded there, Shay, but do you need me to explain that a little bit better? Or?
Oh no, I definitely
cool.
understand what you're saying.
I tend to get a little wordy with this stuff, and I try to explain it as best as I could from the listener's original concept. So, and try to sum it up. But, you know, with crap like this, how do we prevent this stuff from happening? And also, how do we fix these from here on to be able to basically bring the fandoms back to what they were originally, which is a lot of the fandoms that like we all follow have been fairly welcoming. And I think that's what we all kind of want to have a return to. Now, I did make a couple of suggestions in our agenda that I'll bring up here, and I'd love to hear suggestions from you guys too. The first thing that I'm going to recommend, and I've said it for months now, I'm going to keep saying it. Politics need to get out of fandoms. They really do. They don't help. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Politics, for lack of a better term, infecting the fandom and therefore affecting like how people can be fans to a specific franchise, it just doesn't end well. And so at that point, let's start from that point, like getting politics out of the fandoms. How do we do that? Roughly. And that's where we'll have a little bit of thought there. I mean, I tend to be a person who's like pro cold turkey and just say, nope, no more political discussions. Every forum needs to acknowledge that never ends well. And stop bringing it to the forefront of forums, of Facebook posts, or things like that. Any other ideas that you guys want to bring to it?
I agree. Just like don't discuss it. Like don't talk about it. Like it has no point of really being there. The point of being a part of a fandom is to break away from your normal life for those few minutes or a few hours that you're away from your 9 to 5 or your family, or around just being around people that are into the same thing that you're into. And talking about politics, it's like, if I want to talk about politics, I'll talk to my family, I'll talk to my friends about it, whom I can't talk about the fandom that I'm involved in with. That's whom I will talk about politics with. So just don't bring it up. To me, the only way that you should ever bring up politics within a fandom is if it's in a way that is funny, or in a way where you're bringing up some sort of a discussion. I mean, like, even I before had brought up politics very briefly with a YouTube video of mine where I had said, you know, anime characters I would want to see as president, you know, and while some people took that as more like, why'd you bring politics into it? It was like, no, I said these characters because of the fact that I just thought it would be an interesting topic to think of. But I'm not saying anything bad, right? It's just a discussion. It's like, this is just
that's a fun what if,
and right? It's like a what if, but I'm not saying like I'm talking about just strictly politics, but it's just that I feel like, once again, it doesn't have a point of being there. Politics, of course, for a lot of people do divide people because people have differing opinions of everything. So just don't bring it up. It doesn't have any place in it. Unless the politics directly affect the fandom is the only way I would say it should be discussed. Like if they're talking about a law or something like that that's going to affect your particular fandom. But if it's just a whole different set of politics that have nothing to do with the fandom, why bring it up? And if you want to bring it up with somebody, talk about that with them alone, but away from the fandom.
To add to that, there is another way that it could be brought up, and that's if it's part of the subtext of the thing the fandom is surrounding. So a good example, which some people may hate, but it's kind of true. I mean, a good example is if you look at stuff like Star Wars and how, yes, there is a political subtext in Star Wars. So if you're talking about politics as part of the subtext or the context in which something was made, whether it's Star Wars and kind of how George Lucas channeled his own frustrations with the administration when he made the original trilogy, or Star Trek and how it explores different ideas of government and how the Federation conducts itself, or even if you're looking at works. I mean, a good example, if you're looking at something like My Hero Academia and can kind of think like, okay, here's kind of the subtext of what All Might represents and what these villains represent. Like when you're discussing politics, when it's part of the subtext or even part of the text of the thing that the fandom is surrounding, there I think it's okay if you're going to be civil about it. If you're actually discussing if it actually relates to the thing that the fandom is surrounding.
Exactly. I mean, like occasionally I find it funny that Shay brings up kind of the humor aspect. That's pretty much when this podcast has brought up politics, is when we can find some humorous spin to be able to do it. I mean, I like to bring up this story, and I wish I had a link still, but you know, the guy that we covered that went to a Trump rally and went with a trench coat, got to the front of the area, immediately stripped the trench coat and was in a Sailor Moon outfit and started yelling "I'm Sailor Moon and I will end this evil villain." Like he did that and he was hauled up by security. we talked about that, but we only talked about that in the context of this is a dude that decided to go up in a Sailor Moon outfit and show off his fandom kind of thing.
Right.
So,
but then people automatically assume if you're doing that you're like speaking bad about like Trump supporters or about Trump. And to me, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. I mean, you can like them, you can hate them, you can do whatever. The whole context was talking about this guy in a Sailor Moon outfit, and it's funny and it's humorous. And I think it's sometimes people just take things too seriously and take things too literally. And you sometimes have to like tell them to like take a step back. I'm not speaking ill will about whomever it is. I'm just thinking of either what if situations. And even if I do bring up whatever my affiliation is, it doesn't mean that you have to take it into offense. It doesn't mean you have to like get your panties in a bunch about it, you know, like chill, like take a chill pill. It's okay.
I mean, for crying out loud, now
people...
I actually want to see this vlog you did about anime characters who should be president, because I want to see who you came up with.
Yeah, because I had put it on MartAnimE, and one girl got into a very heated conversation with me and was like, you shouldn't put politics in anime. And I was like, hey, like I wasn't putting politics in anime. I was thinking of a what if situation. It's perfectly fine. Yeah. Like, don't worry about it. Like these characters will never become president. We already know this.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually, like, bringing up the heated emotions thing. There's one thing that I could add as a suggestion to kind of give context. As people know, I've been going to therapy and undergoing psychiatric care. And so this is actually a technique I've learned from my therapist that I feel is helpful whenever you're feeling angry, when you're getting really heated during a discussion or during a topic. And the idea is learning how to label your experience objectively. Now, what this means, and I'm going to give the short version, it specifically comes from the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy workbook that I've been doing. And the idea is that you think of a time where you got annoyed. Now, you're going to choose something that mildly annoyed you. You don't want to start with something where you were like ready to murder someone. And then you write down what happened based on your memory. And then you go through and circle anything that is an assumption. So something that isn't a hard fact about the incident, something you're assuming about the person you're speaking to, something you're assuming about the intentions of the person you're speaking to, or even a good example, if you're doing this and you're annoyed that someone is blocking you in traffic, circle anything you think is an assumption of, okay, what are you assuming about the car, about the person, about the situation?
Yeah.
And then cross those out. And then once you've crossed out the assumptions and any of the words that are driven by emotion, and you look at what is left, it makes it a lot easier to approach situations that do get you enraged in a much calmer way, because you know how to distance your emotions from the facts of the incident. And that's something I think even people who don't need to go to therapy it's a skill we can all learn, is learning how to stop, take a deep breath, and try to take a step back in our mind and thinking, okay, what is actually happening? What set me off? Is it worth acting on this anger? 9 times out of 10, usually no.
Now, before we get to Alex on his thoughts, you guys have actually kind of brought up the second suggestion that I had. So we'll just kind of fuse them because they're getting brought up together. And that was, you have to remember the movie, the anime, the game, whatever the fandom is about that brought you there in the first place. So if this is a forum for Yu Yu Hakusho, you have to remember that that's what it's about, and the context doesn't necessarily matter. Like Romney's kind of brought up, politics kind of makes sense when talking Star Trek because it is talking political philosophy to an extent. Modern day politics doesn't really come into that. It's more of a theory kind of thing, but you have to remember what brought you there in the first place and make that the focus of it. And so if at that point, if politics doesn't make sense, then it probably shouldn't be there to begin with. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this one. Do you have any additional thoughts on either of these suggestions?
No, I don't think I have much more, because Romney pretty eloquently stated a lot of coping mechanisms, a lot of ways to just kind of deal with it, keep it in context if there is politicals. I remember on the RPG Why We Geek, you guys mentioned like the potential of a Why We Geek history, right? Which history can be a little bit political, but I think you could also have a lot of fun talking about a history in kind of a geeky conversation, because there are history nerds out there. I'm one of them. And you got to find the right context. You got to find the right forum, the right appropriate time and place to bring these up, and you gotta talk to each other. You gotta see it from both angles of the side. I mean, I've never actually been in a proper debate, like debate kind of class or club or anything, but I know the thing they do teach you, and like if you take a debate class in high school, you know, you're gonna have to research both sides of a topic. You got to debate, even if like,
Sure.
Okay, let's just say, for example, national speed limit. So you would probably research arguments for and pro, but you're probably going to be given like, okay, you're pro national speed limit, but you're still going to research the other side so you understand where the other side's coming from.
Art of War has taught us, know thine enemy.
You know, I mean, well, a good example. I was in Model UN in high school, so we would have to take on a particular country, and we'd have to shape our policies towards that country's view, right? Which is, you know, I'm an American, right? So
put all of your money towards giant robot production because I was Japan.
Yes. Fortunately, ours was a lot more rigid and structured. So
you had the wrong teacher then.
Right. Ours was more truly academic. So, but you know, we'd have to whatever country we had to leave behind the fact that we're Americans and we know the geopolitical American stance, and we had to understand what does this country feel about this issue, and that's how we had to shape our positionings in Model UN conferences.
All right. Any other ones before I bring up the third suggestion, which I think is going to expand this a little bit more? Shay, Romney, do you have anything else to add with the second suggestion?
Honestly, I think we've kind of made the main point in terms of trying to get politics out of it and remembering what we're actually supposed to be talking about and keeping things in context. So
yeah. So the third suggestion that I have, and this is something that I just follow with YouTube, with Discord, with everything, and it's actually become like a Discord rule. Treat people as you would like to be treated. You know, I hate to go back to the golden rule, but it's there for a reason. You know, treat people like you want to be treated. And if you don't like the direction that the fandom is going in that particular forum, in that particular Facebook page, the best thing to do here is, the way that I put it in here is vote with your dollar, not your fist. And the reason I say that is because it's better to vote with, your opinion, or vote with your dollar, so to say, like, are you getting anything out of this now that politics are being brought up and they won't leave, and you're getting constantly mad over it? Is it just better to leave now, and maybe like start up your own thing, or to kind of curtail it, but do so peacefully? And that's the one thing that I would encourage that we learn from this whole Jeremy situation is, like, violence just doesn't solve the problem. Not like, even if this was a political discussion, guys, with people who weren't going to agree, but just think if this had been, I don't know, at a con over the recent Digimon revival kind of thing, and you had, an original purist versus, I like this modern thing, and they got to blows. That would be the absolute worst way to handle these things.
I think that the main thing is also, you got to remember that it's someone's opinion. It's not fact. Yes. So it's just what this person tends to feel. And I feel like mostly just looking at how mostly going this based off of like how the whole like anime fandom is. Because a lot of ways I feel like the anime fandom compared to other fandoms can be a very young fandom, because it has like gotten its times where it's been really big and it's waned and all of that over the years, but people still feel it's an underground fandom, since there's a lot of misconceptions with it. And when I think of it that way, I've had where when people want to argue with you, it's always based off an opinion that you've had, and you're purely just stating your opinion, but it makes it where you no longer want to voice your opinion because of the fact you don't want to be attacked. And the way that you're being attacked is not as far as like people bringing down your opinion. It's like they're attacking whom you are as an individual. Mm-hmm. So it's like, for example, with me, since I obviously post YouTube videos and people obviously can see like what I look like and stuff like that, and I post these videos onto
naysayers,
onto Anime. And a lot of times, sometimes the videos, I don't know who their curators are. They're putting me on what they call their featured page, and I get a lot of people who will then, either downplay what I talked about, get mad at the way that I say certain things, like the fact that I will sometimes say a plural form of animes, like even though it's not plural. It's like I tell people, like, for me it's hard because, you know, with it being English, it feels weird for me not to say it plural because I grew up saying everything plural if it's like multiple. So for me it's hard. Or, you know, people saying stuff about my race or what I look like or calling me names. And it's just like, it's fine for you to disagree with what I'm talking about or to disagree with whatever material that I've made, but to then talk about someone, what they look like, their personality, how they say certain stuff, that just makes it where that person doesn't want to be a part of that fandom, because then they're like, I don't feel welcome. Or they're like, I like this show because of this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, well, you didn't watch this, so you haven't seen a lot of anime. And it's like, I may not have seen that one, but that doesn't mean I haven't seen a lot. And you got to remember, people like different genres, people like certain stuff. And it just takes the whole thing of people need to basically, in some ways, be a little bit more mature and understand that people are going to be different. And the best way is if someone hasn't seen a show that you generally love, or just hasn't seen something in general that you love, you just say, hey, you might like this, check it out. If you don't like it, that's fine. Or if you don't want to see it, that's fine. But
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, unfortunately, violence is kind of the grade school answer here. It's the playground answer. And really, yeah, we all need to kind of approach this as adults and be able to realize that, you know, just because we're disagreeing with an opinion, and granted, we've all shared opinions at one point and we've all had disagreements with them. It's that we're disagreeing with the opinion, not necessarily that we're attacking the individual.
Right.
Grant, and that's another thing that I think just be overall avoided is, like, unfortunately, politics these days gets really personal, really quick. And it's very unavoidable, especially with considering how, you know, I hate to coin the term from Joe Rogan, but how tribalistic things have kind of gotten in that landscape. But I also think, like, you guys have kind of hit the nail on the head too, is like voting with your dollar is just simply saying, I'm not saying that I don't like this community. I like a lot of people in there, but it's also along the lines of, I can't get behind bringing these things into a fandom that I love. In this context. And so at that point, if that means that you got to leave there so that you can go and do like your own, where you adhere to the rules that you liked, you could still do that. I've had a lot of pages this year alone where I simply left them because the communities got too big and people got lost in the shuffle. So you could have these opinions and then you would get shouted down for having these opinions. Yet a lot of the people that were shouting you down, you didn't know them. They didn't know you from Adam or anything like that. And therefore at that point, like, they treat you like you're immediately being an enemy or you're being a troll, and you have to leave. So at that point, like, having those smaller communities also might be able to help in that regard. But yeah, the bottom line is that you have to remember where things are focused. And you have to be able to treat people as you would like to be treated. Would you like to be treated like the way that Jeremy just got treated? Like, have the crap beaten out of you? No. That's the best way to be able to do it.
And I think the other thing is also, for anyone who's a part of a fandom that they feel this way, is to just, the one thing my dad always says is you always have to stay true to who you are. So if you're a part of this fandom and you love it, don't let those few people that talk bad to you or disagree with your opinion, you know, make you feel like you want to leave it. Because, you know what, you got to realize that don't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch. So there are some generally very nice people part of the family. You just kind of have to find them, which kind of sucks. But it's like, keep spouting your opinion because it's your opinion. So keep saying it if you're okay with it. If you're true to your opinion, there's going to be someone who's going to agree with you in some context, and that's perfectly okay. But just be true to who you are, be okay with it. And also, for those ones who are like talking down to these people or making them feel like complete crap, you have to think about how you felt when someone has treated you the same way. And then you realize that you don't want someone else to feel that way. But it also makes it seem like, because of the internet and people typing away at a computer half the time, they get more bold behind a screen because they're not in person. They don't see the look on this person's face of when they read terrible comments about themselves or read what people are saying. And that's why, for me, I've made it my own like thing to where I rarely respond to negative comments unless it's where I have to explain something so that someone understands it. For example, it's like if someone said something about a video I posted, but it's clear that they never watched the video, then I'm like, watch the video, I explain it. But if it's where someone is just saying something that makes no sense, like, I'm like, sorry to say this, but I've had people call me the N-word after watching my videos or not even watching it. And yeah. And then of course, I only respond though to those that are positive comments. So I'm letting those people know, like, I'm not going to give you any attention whatever you say. And also just remembering in your head that these people, especially if they're on a computer, are behind a computer screen. So they are no way bold enough to come to you, to your face, and say anything like this. And if you're ever in public and someone is in your face saying this stuff to you, try and see if you can get to a safe place, see if there's people around you, or try and see if you can diffuse the situation in any way. But just try to be safe overall if this is like in a public general area so that you're not hurt or anything of that matter. And most of all, listen. If this person's just screaming at you, the best thing you can do is not to argue back, because I've learned no one can argue by themselves. So if you just shut up and just listen to this person, after a while, they're going to drown themselves out. And then you're like, I understand your opinion. I'm glad that you shared it with me. Can I have the same respect and explain my opinion to you? And they may say no. And at that point you can say, okay, since you don't want to hear my opinion and I've heard yours, at this point, I no longer want to continue this conversation since I don't have that respect. And I know it's easier to say it now than to do it, but it's the best thing that you can do so that you can have a lot more fun in the fandom that you're in without feeling like you're bullied or you're not welcome.
I would also like to applaud. No, you're good. I would also like to applaud Alex because he could have obviously brought up the fact that yes, I probably could conduct an argument all by myself. But thanks, Alex. Thanks for being a sport and not bringing that up.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that point, it kind of raises the other key thing is if you're going to state your opinion, learn to state it in a civil way. So,
yes.
I mean, a lot of things that came up, attacking the person, and a lot of these things, and even the no true fan things. If you're going to state an opinion, if you're going to debate with someone, if you disagree with someone's opinion, attack the argument, not the person. That is what in debate would be called ad hominem. It's just sadly some people take that to a very literal degree. And I've looked at some of the comments of even people trying to celebrate the fact that Jeremy got attacked, and here's kind of what I've realized, and this is coming from someone who has undergone martial arts training, who has... But although I've never been in a life or death fight, and frankly, I hope that it never comes to that, because the thing is that I've noticed that people say, oh yeah, it's nice to punch people who disagree with you and do stuff like that. It's just like, no, it isn't. Because clearly, if you say it's nice to punch someone who disagrees with you, you've clearly, A, never been in a fight, B, never have actually had to avoid someone who meant to do you harm, and 3, it's a case where... To do away with the number thing, it's a case of you clearly have never been in fear of your life. You've never been in a dangerous area where you weren't even sure if you were going to get home at the end of the night. And although I've been fortunate in that I haven't been in any life or death scenarios, I know what that fear is like. I know what it's like when the adrenaline runs high, if you're and granted, this is within safe sparring circumstances, but this was still something that my very, very, very good martial arts instructors have made it clear is, at the end of the day, it's not worth... basically, like, if they're going for your wallet, just give them the wallet. You can cancel the cards later. It's not worth getting in a fight if you're gonna... It's not worth defending your honor if you're gonna end up bleeding out on the sidewalk with no one batting an eye.
Well, and here's the thing also is, like, as you kind of pointed out, is, unless you've actually experienced a fight, you don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah, because I've even talked with people at Slick who were veterans who have that same temperament where they may have those opinions, they may even have disagreed with me, but you can tell the difference between someone who's been in a fight, someone who's even had to take another life, and who understands that this is actually not a very good thing. And to kind of bring back to my main point, if you have an opinion, if it is a controversial opinion within the fandom, even if it's just a case of, you're upset with the character who chose one love interest over another, learn to phrase it civilly. Learn to attack the argument, not the person. And again, be nice and polite, because again, I mean, the most famous recurring example I bring up is the debate between me and our former panelist Aldo Gomez, and the debate between which was the better game, Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII. Yes, we disagreed. Personally, I think Cloud Strife is a better protagonist compared to Squall Leonhardt, but it was a case of we talked about the genuine flaws of the characters and the way the stories were told. We did not insult each other. We specifically looked at the arguments that we made, and we both came to the conclusion that 9 is the best of the PlayStation trilogy.
All right, yeah, and that's exactly where you guys should have gone. All right, that's the way it went.
Yeah, I think also if you do have a controversial opinion, or especially if you know your opinion is going to be controversial, you have to at least know that someone's going to say something back.
Sure.
And you also have to be open to it. So you have to be like, I'm going to accept that people are probably going to not like my opinion, but I'm going to just respond as they should. So that being as the comment poster or being as a person that's going to comment back to somebody else's, like, you just have to understand that it's going to happen. Someone's going to find something to say, and just be open to it. Don't be closed off to it. Don't automatically get upset or heated about it if they don't like your favorite character, if they feel like a show that you absolutely love that they absolutely hated. It's perfectly fine. People have their opinions. Be open to, especially if you know your opinion is going to be controversial already when you post it. When you're like, I know people are going to hate this, send. Like, then it's like,
I mean, how many of us, like, literally, sorry to cut you off, but like, how many of us as YouTube content creators literally live this?
Yeah, I still get comments both on my Mad Max video and my Halloween analysis because, again, my controversial opinion, I did not like Fury Road. I do not think it's as great a film as everyone thought it was, and I still get people giving me crap for it. But on the other example of a positive example of people pointing out the flaw in an argument I made in a video is on the Halloween review. That was when I first started out, and I even disclosed, I wasn't able to make it past the first hour, and people fairly pointed out, well, you didn't watch the whole film. This analysis is clearly biased, which was a valid argument.
Well, and at that point, I mean, like, I can speak personally, my reviews, they tend to find themselves very much on the unpopular opinion kind of part of the bracket. I mean, for crying out loud, Alex can attest that, like, he wasn't necessarily happy when I put up my Sonic Forces review, where, he hated it, and I actually found some good things about it. I actually even had enough people disagreeing with me that one of them decided to copyright claim that video. And so at that point, it lasted for 24 hours, but they did it. But, and then we've also had those other kind of personal attack things happen during a lot of these things. And the best way to be able to do it, in our experience, at least I'm speaking for people, but it's just to take on the argument, not necessarily the person, because that's really all you can take on at that given moment. Now, I think we've actually hit this really, really, really hard, and I want to recommend this to so many people, but unfortunately, we're running out of time, and so we need to wrap things up. But before we do that, since I knew that we were going to be taking on a rather heavy topic, I actually did get at least something to be able to help mellow things out as we wrap things up. This person did suggest that I just got a random question off the internet, and the person that gave it to me simply wanted me to refer to him as K2SO. And so at that point, here is the question, and then we'll wrap things up. Your waifu. Name it. Go! I will go ahead and answer this because my waifu hasn't changed. My waifu's out there. My wife is my waifu. I like, a lot of people think I'm joking when I say that, but my waifu is Keiko Yukimura from Yu Yu Hakusho, and technically that's who my wife is. She's my childhood sweetheart and all that stuff. So she's my Keiko. Therefore, she's my waifu. Aww. So I made a good decision in life, is what I'm saying to people. Alex, your waifu. Go.
That's tough because I got many waifus, but or at least many
Alex.
Many I'd like to proclaim as my waifus, but they all filed restraining orders against me. But I guess I choose my
waifu. You claim Laura Bailey did with me.
Yes.
Actually, now what's really funny is I really like to do work with her, so we could swap baby stories now.
Oh, nice.
Because she had a baby. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, that's very nice.
He's so cute.
Oh, he is.
So I'd actually pick my waifu again. Classic is this one Homer Akemi, and for those who get to watch this on YouTube, you get to see me hold up my darling little plush toy of her. She's my favorite time traveling magical girl.
See if you can send me a picture so we can put it up on the RSS feed for people.
Okay.
So Homer Akemi, and I have a feeling we've got another one. Do we have another one? You said multiple, so
all right. If I get to name a second one, then I'll also would say Mio Akiyama from K-On!
Of course,
My favorite left-hand bassist.
Stephen Romney, your waifu, go.
This is tough since I don't really, at least I don't think in those terms. I don't really have a waifu, real or fictional. So, but I guess in terms of favorite female characters, off the top of my head, I can think of only really two. I mean, the first one that I guess I figured kind of made a bit of an, well, I guess technically three-ish. Because again, I don't really think in these terms. So in terms of like characters that I kind of could consider my favorite, I mean, kind of embarrassing to admit this, but the first one I did kind of have a mild crush on is Sasami from Tenchi Muyo. But
All
again,
right, yeah, I can get that.
Yeah, and I was a kid at the time, so it's not weird. I was like 10 years old at the time, so again, this isn't like me being the creepy neckbeard being like, no, it was appropriate for the time. And then from there, another character that I found myself somewhat fascinated with is Lindis of Kaelin from Fire Emblem 7, which was the first Fire Emblem. And granted, there's a reason why people latch on the character. She's the first one you meet. She's the first person you go on the journey with into the world of Fire Emblem. Granted, with the continent of Alib, so there's that sense of attachment there, since she's literally the person who finds your character knocked out in the middle of the field and nurses you back to health, and then you lead her to eventually reuniting with her grandfather, who is one of the head Marquis of Kaelin. And then third example, and it's one that I kind of took influence from when writing a series of really badly written self-insertion Final Fantasy fan fiction that I published for all the people in my high school to read. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but this was a thing I did. And that character would be Shanoa from Castlevania Order of Ecclesia.
All right. Now, Shay, the waifu question is a little bit more complicated. I think the actual, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, is it a husbando?
Yeah.
So at this point, your husbando, go!
Okay. It's hard because, like, my boyfriend's sitting right across from me.
We're putting him on the spot.
So he's technically my real life husband, even though he's not my husband.
Very nice.
He also doesn't hear me because he has on headphones. I said, picture my husbando. He said, oh, because I finally told him. And then
that's kind of my wife's reaction whenever I say that. I'm like, you're my Keiko. She's like, oh, who's that?
If I have to say, like, as far as like my anime husbando goes, I have to go with Mori from Oran High School Host Club. He's one. And my other one is probably Sesshomaru from Inuyasha.
Yeah.
I like the silent ones. Mori said like one word in that entire series, which was and I still was like, oh, he's my favorite character.
Yeah, the one that wasn't surprising to me was Sesshomaru because seriously, my nieces have a major crush on him. I think actually that's one of my wife's like husbandos.
Yeah,
that are Andros from Power Rangers, which we don't speak of.
Yeah, and yeah, my sister, very big Sesshomaru fan, so much so that she cosplayed him as one. I guess it was for one convention. I don't know which one, but she went to great lengths to make it. Even found a way to make the floof.
Oh yes,
nice.
You gotta have the floof.
Yes,
otherwise it don't work.
But it gotta be Sesshomaru's dub voice. It cannot be the original voice.
Well, see, that's the thing. She was of the opposite camp. She was very much the pro-sub camps when it came to Inuyasha.
I couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially because Inuyasha PlayStation fighting game, you can like change what the characters say with different characters. And so whenever she, like, you can literally change it. Oh, if Inuyasha defeats Kagome, you can make him say this. And so when she literally changed the setting because one of the things is literally Sesshomaru saying "I love you" in Japanese, and so she literally would like make that change for almost all the characters whenever she would play the game, just so she could hear it.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. So with that, we are actually overtime. It's the longest time since we've actually done this. So this has been an awesome episode. We've been able to cover some silly stories. We've been able to have an awesome guest on. We've also been able to cover some heavy stuff and then end things a little bit more on the lighter tone. So I do like that, but we got to wrap things up. So if people want to be able to continue the conversation with us via social media or anything like that, or heaven forbid, if they actually want to check out the content that we provide, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
You can find me on YouTube. Shadow Blazer 3000 is my anime-related channel. I do anime-related content, as I just said, and I also do the occasional Let's Plays. I'm gonna cook something up for this weekend. Just not a big review, just kind of a little weird think piece that I just came up with a few days ago. So keep an eye out for that. And on social media, when you always want to be alerted to a new video going live, you can follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right. Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can always find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle both on YouTube and on Facebook. I do upload to both in the weird, brief, once-in-a-blue-moon moments where I actually do upload anything. I am also on Instagram under Romney Does Art, which I really need to do more of in order to make that username not a lie. And I am also on Twitter, which is probably the best way to get in touch with me if you want to suggest something for me, or if you want to send anything my way for me to comment on. Seriously, people, stop sending it to Adam. I'm making this a running thing as a nice reminder for people, because the guy's got a second kid on the way, so let's give him a break. And my mic just died, so there we go. But so my Twitter handle is Romney Reviews. It didn't let me add the apostrophe S, and so there is that. And as for this week's Romney's recommendation, it's oddly fitting, considering that we talked about kind of the futility of violence, as this week's Romney's recommendation is actually a film I just barely finished watching before coming on the show tonight. It is a film titled The Duelists. This was the directorial debut of Ridley Scott. It is about two soldiers in Napoleon's army that get locked into this ongoing struggle where they are constantly having to duel one another. And this is a story that spans like decades. So starts from when Napoleon rose to power to even after the fall of Napoleon at Waterloo. And so it's a very fascinating story that just talks about this, again, the futility of petty violence when you have one character played by Harvey Keitel constantly challenging this other character played by Keith Carradine, and you just kind of see how one is just obsessed with dueling, obsessed with this notion of honor, and how this character doesn't end up really doing anything with his life, whereas Keith Carradine's character ends up eventually settling down, having a family, actually making a name for himself. And not to mention, the reason why I stumbled across it is that it probably features some of the most realistic sword fighting choreography that I have ever seen in any film. You can tell the people who choreograph these fight scenes are actually fencers. They know how to use sabers. They know how to use foils. They even know how to do horseback sword fighting. It's a case of, you can tell Ridley Scott cared about the historical accuracy and that the people choreographing it knew what they were doing. And the cool thing is, if you have Amazon Prime, you can stream it for free. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation, is The Duelists.
All right. And Shay Turi, holy crap, this has been a very interesting first episode for you on the podcast. Was it at least enjoyable for you?
It was very enjoyable. I loved it. And just for you, I will do another Motivational Monday for this Monday.
Yay!
Just for you. I will do one. I've been wanting to do one, so I'm going to do one.
I'm sorry. A buddy of mine actually recommends that if I can actually pull this off, that I should do it. So yes, 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 yes. Okay, I'm good now. All right. So Shay, first of all, if people want to be able to see more of Shay on the podcast, please feel free to let us know. I'm pretty sure if Shay would, the way that it sounded to me is, Shay, you would like to be able to come back if opportunity arose. So at that point, let us know, listeners, let us know if you would like to have her back, because obviously that's kind of what drives things around here. But in the meantime, if people want to check out the content that you provide, as well as be able to get in touch with you on the opinions you've shared, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/ShayTaree. So it's just one word. It's SHAYTAREE. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter, it is my Twitter handle is @Shay_Taree. From there, you can basically let me know of anything you guys would like me to try and review, or any like news articles you guys find and what my discussions or how I feel about them are. I come out with new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So I actually have a new video out for you guys tomorrow. And I also released a video on Wednesday. So be sure to check that out. And that's where you guys can find me.
All right, very cool. And then we will also leave a link in the below to like the main blog site, because that's where pretty much everything can be accessed, right?
Yes.
So we'll put that in the RSS feed for people also, so you guys can be able to get in touch with her content and be able to check it out, because guys, she does produce awesome content. And in fact, she left one out. And in fact, if we don't talk about it, then I have a feeling I'm going to get beaten horribly, because your co-host is in the chat.
Yes.
So at that point, she is also one half of the Senshi Annie Girls podcast. I believe that you guys have been on a bit of a hiatus, but things might be changing around so that we can get additional episodes. But you guys can look that up on by searching Senshi Annie Girls podcast on YouTube and be able to see all the episodes that they've done. And they've actually tackled some really cool issues, not just for anime fans, but I actually would dare argue geeks in general. A lot of awesome things have been able to be discussed there also. There you go, Lita. Now, please don't kill me. We have officially mentioned it. I'm actually I'm not even gonna lie. I'm actually in a little bit of trouble, because we did the whole Why We Geek podcast and now this. So that's a little bit of an issue.
Hey,
but
and
unfortunately it looks like we had a little bit of an issue. But so if people want to be able to get a hold of me, no, all good. All good. It's getting late, we understand.
Spirit controls the lights, and my boyfriend left, so the lights automatically turned off when he was from a distance away. So I had to ask Siri to turn the lights back on again.
That's what happens when Skynet takes over the house.
the home pod. Oh my god.
Exactly. All right. If people want to be able to get a hold of me, you guys can follow me on Twitter @Direct2326. That's the best place to be able to reach out to me for opinions and whatnot. It's also where a lot of my content gets put out, so you guys can check that out. You're also on my YouTube channel right now, so you guys can check out the content that I provide. I do game reviews, let's plays, mostly gaming content, but I do actually tackle other geeky content, specifically like the Why We Geek podcast takes on specific subjects that you might want to be able to check into. If you want to follow the podcast directly, the first thing that we recommend you guys do is support the RSS feed, which is geekyweek.podomatic.com. And you can either do that, or you can search on iTunes or Google Play for Android users, the GNRO podcast or Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, and be able to search for it there as well. If you want to support the podcast via social media, you can do so under the exact same tagline, Geeky NRO, for either Facebook or Twitter, and be able to get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stuff we're going to be talking about. If we have guests like Shay on, that's definitely going to be there too. So you guys can check that out also. And if you want to suggest stories or leave your comments or opinions on things that we might be able to improve here, you could do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So thank you guys so much for joining us on this interesting evening as we've discussed everything, both broad and narrow. It's been awesome. I love it. Thank you guys so much for your continued love and support of the podcast. We really do appreciate it. And of course, we will be back next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. So for me, for Alex, for Shay, and for Romney, we'll see you guys next time.